Chapter 2508. Of course, the black-clothed youth would not allow it. His left hand moved. There was no sound between the saber and the scabbard. Only a small part of the saber was exposed. Immediately, a gray saber light burst out. In an instant, the black-clothed youth seemed to have become a death god. The surroundings became a death zone. The aura of death surged and filled every corner. Although his movements were fast, Chu Yang's voice was faster. "Do you want your mother to cut herself in half?" The black-clothed youth's movements suddenly stopped. However, at this moment, Chu Yang felt as if he had fallen into an ice cave. His whole body was cold. It was bone-chilling. He even began to tremble. However, he did not hide it at all. He could not help but sigh in shock. "You mother and son are really scary. Fortunately, I'm very good at treating scaring people. If I cut off your heads, no one should be afraid of you anymore. I'm also very good at treating a disease called fearlessness." The black-clothed youth spoke for the first time. The eyes on his face finally came to life. As he turned, his sharp gaze instantly fell on Chu Yang. His gaze was definitely not very intense. It was as if all of his power had been very restrained and concentrated, so much so that even if it was just a gaze, it would not be able to consume any of his energy. "Damn you! You're really the same as those two dead faces I met. They're completely the same. It's really infuriating." Chu Yang could not help but swear. These things were actually able to do something to such an extreme. It was really scary. It was difficult for such a person not to be awesome. He hated this kind of person because this kind of person always seemed to remind him that he didn't work hard enough, that he was lazy like a pig. At this moment, he even felt like he was sleeping in a pigsty, white and fat. "People like me are not rare. It's very easy to deal with them, right?" This was the black-clothed youth's second sentence. He had clearly understood from Chu Yang's words that it wouldn't be very troublesome to deal with people like him. "You don't like to talk. If you understand it this way, it's really a good thing for you because it will save a lot of nonsense." Chu Yang smiled and said, "The power you believe in can't solve all problems. At least, that's the case in front of me. For example, the saber in your left hand can't solve the problem in front of you. Can't you kill me?" The eyes of the black-clothed youth suddenly shone brightly. "All this time, I seem to have tacitly agreed to it, so I have always been very willful." "Pa!" Chu Yang suddenly took out a folding fan and opened it with a snap. Then, he gently waved it. Then, he touched his forehead with his left hand and said to himself, "Maybe a feather fan and a silk scarf would be better. Next time, I can try to change the style a bit." His response was very clear. The black-clothed youngster pressed the half of his saber back, and the light in his eyes dimmed. He seemed to be even more similar to the stone statue, and when he spoke, his lips didn't move at all. "Looks like I have to give it a try. Please." Chu Yang gently fanned himself with his folding fan as he stretched out his hand. "Please." The black-clothed youth did not make a move. He suddenly did not speak. He was at the Earth Emperor realm. It was absolutely no problem for him to kill the Nirvana realm in front of him. However, the problem was that he might not be able to take revenge because his enemies would soon know of his existence. If he could not take revenge, he might even be hunted down. At that time, his mother might not even have the chance to cut herself in half. The saber in his hand indeed could not solve all problems. It was a deadlock. Chapter 2509. Silence, absolute silence. There was no sound for a long time. There were only two people facing each other. One gently waved the folding fan in his hand with a faint smile on his face. The other had a sculpted face that seemed to be covered with frost. He was cold and his left hand was tightly gripping the hilt of his sword. Previously, when the other half of the sword was pressed back, it was definitely not because he did not want to make a move. Pressing the sword back into the scabbard was more familiar with it. The young man in the dark night was able to draw his sword faster. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The wind outside suddenly blew, but it did not affect where the two of them were. However, the swaying lights were suddenly extinguished at this moment, causing the two of them to completely sink into darkness. Everything around them became even more deathly silent. Your condition? After a long silence, a voice suddenly emerged from the darkness. It did not seem abrupt, but it was very strange. It was as if a miracle was happening in the darkness. Name. Another voice sounded in the darkness. Compared to a miracle, this voice seemed to be extremely vulgar. This voice even explained, "Sorry, I have already collected the names of the other two dead faces. I also want to collect your name." Wu Cho. These two words seemed very grand and sacred. They were also filled with pride and confidence, so it sounded like the voice of a god. Wu Cho, I want the cultivation system of the witchcraft era. In the darkness, the voice suddenly became silent again. There was no sound for a long time. With a bang, a flame burst out from the darkness. Then, a bonfire could be seen. A bastard seemed to have torn down someone's house and used it to light a fire. The light of the fire shone on a smiling face. This smiling face smiled and said, "It seems that you are more comfortable in the darkness." He did not seem to know that he was going overboard. Going overboard. This was really going to kill him. It was either his life or the other person's life. However, the fatal thing did not happen. Instead, the bonfire burned even more fiercely. It was unknown how much brighter it was than before. It completely illuminated a cold, dead face and the left hand that was tightly gripping the hilt of the sword. The veins on the left hand were popping out. The smiling face opposite him very impolitely found something and sat down on it. He didn't even look at the cold dead man's face as he leisurely waved the fan in his hand. Fearless. Chu Yang's illness was not light. Moreover, it was already in the late stages. There was no cure. Wu Cho seemed to be considering whether or not he had the ability to cure such an illness. Obviously, it was not easy for him to cure such an illness. Even if he chopped off that person's head, he was afraid that he would not be able to cure it. Moreover, the relapse would be very serious. Blood feud and the witchcraft epoch. Which one was more important? Faced with such an illness, Wu Cho only had two choices, but no one could tell him which one to choose. How are you going to win my trust? The answer finally came out. To Wu Cho, it seemed that nothing was more important and precious than his mother. Chu Yang was not surprised. He would be surprised if Wu Cho did not choose this. Do you need it? Who am I? He did not look at Wu Cho. He continued to gently wave the fan in his hand as he proudly said these words. In the end, he continued, but it seems like I've overestimated you. And I shouldn't have spoken to you in such a manner and in such a tone. The last sentence was even more arrogant and egotistical. Chapter 25:10. Wu Cho seemed to be replying to Chu Yang's disdain. He seemed to be proving that he was capable enough to see through Chu Yang with a single glance. He flicked his finger and a chi sound was heard. Then, a misty beam of light flew towards Chu Yang from the flames of the bonfire. The beam of light was both slow and fast, making it seem very strange. The space rumbled as the hazy beam of light flew through space. It seemed like a world was traveling through space, but it also seemed like a long river of civilization was surging forward. Chu Yang could not help but smile when he saw the scenes of the ancient times from the hazy beam of light. Success, I've obtained another epoch of civilization. The Confucian epoch, the Immortal epoch, and the Shaman epoch made him possess 3 epochs of civilization. With the 3 added together, it would not be difficult for him to fight an earthly king even though he was only at the Nirvana realm. Everything was going more smoothly than he had imagined. However, he was very lucky to have met someone like Wu Cho. There were certain kinds of people in this world for whom integrity was more important than their lives. Many people could not help but admire them for their character. Chu Yang was not this kind of person, but he should become this kind of person in front of this kind of person. The hazy beam of light constantly displayed scenes of the primordial times, and it also slowly explained the formation of the shaman path. In these scenes, primordial beasts rampaged, demons, and even gods, monsters, ghosts, and demons ruled the world. The people of the ancient times were born in the world. Their blood flowed like rivers under the claws of the beast. They begged the heavens in floods, struggled to survive in mountain fires, and died in epidemics. In their ignorance, they mistook thunder, lightning, rain, volcanic eruptions, and the like as the wrath of the gods. They lived in fear and trepidation all day long, fearing that the gods would send disasters if they were slightly unlucky. As a result, the people of the ancient times began to pray to the gods for protection and protection. This led to the worship of totems and rituals. Through these rituals, the people expressed their devotion to the gods and prayed. The leader of the ritual conveyed the wishes of the people to God. They were called witches. Sorcerers seemed to be between gods and humans. They could know the will of gods, but they were just people with a strange ability to communicate with heaven and earth. However, with the development of witchcraft, mortal wizards became wise men in the future. Comprehending the heavenly Tao, understanding the principles of the heavens, possessing boundless power, saving the people of the world from the danger of destruction, saving the ancestors of the human race from destruction, forcing the ferocious beasts to bow their heads, demons and monsters to retreat thousands of miles away, and finally becoming gods, saints, ghosts, demons, and even all kinds of innate great divine abilities. Chu Yang was not on guard at all. He received the beam of light directly, not at all worried that it was one of Wu Chao's killer moves. He even sat down with his legs crossed and was about to throw the witchcraft civilization into the two-dimensional grotto heaven coordinates to begin cultivating. "Aren't you going to confirm it?" Wu Chou couldn't help but speak up. He really couldn't hold it in any longer. The other party's heart was really too big. "It seems that not only did I overestimate you, but you also underestimated me?" Wu Chou did not speak. He had no way to speak. Fortunately, he did not speak much. However, he was a little angry and couldn't help but ask, "Are you planning to cultivate here? You think it's very difficult?" Chu Yang grinned, revealing his white teeth as he mocked. "It's just the witchcraft epoch. It won't take much time." Chapter 25:11. He was very familiar with the witchcraft epoch, and he was also very familiar with its profundities. It was impossible for him to comprehend it in a short period of time. This required a long period of time to come into contact with, understand, and finally comprehend. At the very least, that was how Wu Chou had managed to survive. If it was that easy to comprehend the witchcraft era, he wouldn't have only seen the broken sword tonight. He wouldn't have had to wait until today to complete his cultivation in the witchcraft era before he could complete his apprenticeship. In the blink of an eye, not only was he unable to say anything, he couldn't even sneer in his heart. On that cold, deadpan face, his eyes suddenly widened like copper bells. Rumble! Along with the sound of rolling thunder and the sound of thousands of soldiers and horses coming from Chu Yang's body, a misty, desolate aura surged out and shrouded his entire body. Amidst this primitive aura, various figures with human heads and snake bodies, 3 heads and 6 arms, a single eye, and so on and so forth appeared. They were either enveloped by flames, controlled water, communicated with the stars, or controlled the weather. The fire shaman, water shaman, star shaman, life shaman, medical shaman, and so on appeared one by one. They became the main nodes of the witchcraft era, forming the outline of the civilization history of the witchcraft era. Following this, the shaman Dao's long river of civilization was divided into 2 branches. One was scarlet and filled with an evil aura of death. The other was filled with all kinds of poisonous creatures. They were brightly colored and filled with poisonous gas. All kinds of sharp cries rang out. These were the 2 branches of the witchcraft path, the art of curses and the art of goo poison. They were performed smoothly and appeared in front of Wu Chou one by one. These images were even clearer and more detailed than Wu Chao's own, to the point that he was completely immersed in them. In the Sage Monarch College, Chu Yang was very rough with his experience with the immortal epoch. He directly threw the witchcraft epoch into the two-dimensional grotto heaven coordinate. Then, he went to provoke the divine cauldron. Everything went smoothly. Especially after he provoked the divine cauldron, everything could not be any easier. The word Wu starts from Gong and starts from Ren. The two horizontal lines of Gong represent heaven and earth, respectively. The Ji in the middle means that one can communicate with heaven's will and issue earth's decree. Man means to understand heaven and earth, and to be agreeable to one's will. The people in it are not isolated people, but people who support each other are shamans. During this process, he was also comprehending. The essence of the witchcraft Tao was to communicate with the power of heaven and earth. It was similar to a formation master. In comparison, be it the witchcraft path or the formation Tao, his comprehension was much deeper. The goo poison of the Sorcerer Wei reminded him of the five-colored poison light. If he could fully comprehend the Sorcerer Wei's goo poison, it would be easy for him to unleash the five-colored poison light. Completely forgetting himself, Chu Yang sank into a deep state of comprehension, suddenly forgetting everything around him. Apart from him, Wu Chou was also greatly moved because of Chu Yang. He had a great epiphany and sunk into a strange state. Therefore, neither Chu Yang nor Wu Chou had noticed when the old woman had silently appeared with two people. The old woman and the other two had come because of the extremely strong witchcraft Tao aura. When they arrived, they noticed everything in front of them and immediately fell into deep shock. There was actually someone who could comprehend the witchcraft Tao so quickly. Although the old woman did not know Chu Yang's identity, the two people beside her knew very well. Chapter 25:12. He didn't die. His speed of understanding Sorcerer Tao is so terrifying. The moment Wu Qing and Wu Zhua saw Chu Yang, two kinds of shock struck their hearts, and they were dumbfounded. They were in disbelief. They immediately had the urge to stab Chu Yang again and cut off his head to prove that this was real. The old woman was also trembling. She never thought that such a change would happen. She never thought that such an unbelievable thing would happen. The Chu Yang she heard about was so powerful and terrifying. It was far beyond her imagination. The three of them didn't attack Chu Yang. They were just waiting quietly. Buzz. After an unknown period of time, Chu Yang woke up from his deep meditation. He suddenly opened his eyes, and ripples rippled out from his eyes. It seemed as if a huge storm had been released from his eyes. Two rays of light floated out from his eyes like tentacles. He was in the state of witchcraft. Chu Yang easily entered the state of witchcraft. In the state of witchcraft, he naturally sensed the old woman. The old woman's face was still like a black hole. His gaze would be swallowed by it. Her face was still covered by a black veil, and her body was still covered by a black robe. Naturally, he had seen Wu Zhua, who had cut off his own head. Wu Qing pierced him with her sword. With the mind net, he also saw it. He even sensed a lot of information from the old woman. Chu Yang greets Auntie. Chu Yang smiled and bowed to the old woman. You think that you can leave here alive if I like you a lot? The old woman's voice was cold and emotionless. However, Chu Yang was not afraid at all. He smiled and said, "It's because you don't like me that I have to make you like me. In fact, I have to go overboard. Auntie, allow me to say something. Isn't it tragic enough that Uncle was cut in half? After he died, you kept blaming him for his incompetence. You even went so far as to humiliate his son." There was a buzzing sound in the air, accompanied by a clanging sound. Wu Chao's saber was already out of its sheath, but he could not move at all. The old woman's expression changed when she heard Chu Yang's words. She was like a dam bursting, a mountain cracking, and the sky collapsing. A crazy, uncontrollable aura immediately surged out of her body. Time stopped. Time stopped. Whether it was Chu Yang, Wu Chou, Wu Qing, or Wu Zhua, all of them seemed to be frozen at this moment. They couldn't move at all. If the old woman willed it again, the four of them would die in an instant. Her face was covered by a veil. They could not see her expression. They could only feel that her breathing became rapid and heavy, like a cow's panting. If someone saw the old woman's face under the black veil, they would probably be scared to death. The old woman's strength was unfathomable. The moment she touched the deepest pain in her heart, a terrifying aura erupted. It was as if she could freeze and destroy the world with a single thought. It was terrifying. You better have a reason. Otherwise, you know the consequences. The witchcraft's curse spell and goo poison spell can make one beg for death. Chapter 25:13. The old woman was indeed a little frightening, but from another perspective, Chu Yang was also successful. If his words could not provoke the old woman, how could he move her? This was only one of Chu Yang's doppelgangers, so he was not very afraid. He directly asked, "Auntie, think about it. Uncle was cut in half by a knife, and his beloved saw it all with her own eyes. How do you think he would feel when he was about to die?" The old woman's shriveled body hidden in the black robe suddenly trembled violently. Would he be angry? Would he be unwilling? Would he blame himself, or even hate himself for being weak and useless? Would he feel guilty? Would he not be worried that you would not be able to bear it? Would he not have thought of the pain and hatred you would have? After a slight pause, Chu Yang continued to question, "Uncle, I'm afraid that the things that he was worried about before his death have all happened now. In my opinion, even if he died tragically, he would not want you to live a life that was neither human nor ghost, and even poison your son. Think about it, if he knew about this, he would not be able to rest in peace in the underworld. Even if he had to break the heavens and earth, he would break free no matter what. He would probably blame himself even more, hate himself even more for being useless, dig out his heart every day, and be in so much pain that he would rather die." Every single question caused the shriveled body of the old woman, which was hidden under the black robe, to tremble violently before she fell limp without a sound. It shocked Wu Chou to the point that he immediately went over to support his mother. That icy cold face of a dead person actually twisted, and even became ferocious as he roared furiously, "Shut your mouth!" Chu Yang was also a little regretful. This was a typical problem of being a savior. He wanted to save everything in the world, he wanted to control everything, and he even wanted to preach to the world. However, what was done was done. If he stopped now, it would be teasing people. He ignored Wucho and said again, "Auntie, think about it. If you were a little stronger, a little more tenacious, and could walk out of your sorrow and live in happiness again, then wouldn't Uncle in the netherworld have some consolation?" When he said these seemingly reasonable words, he wanted to vomit in his own face. Because although he was incompetent, his wife was not only strong, but also very wise. She handled everything well. Not only did she live a beautiful and happy life, but she also raised a child. "Enough!" Wu Chou roared again, but was stopped by the old woman. Her voice trembled as she said, "Are you saying that you don't want to take revenge? To Uncle, the most important thing is definitely not enmity. The most important thing is you and your son, followed by enmity." Chu Yang felt even more like he had done something wrong. He could only force himself to be omniscient and heal the world. He once again opened his mouth to preach, "Auntie, if you live a life that is neither human nor ghost, and even if you put hatred on your son like a curse, even if you take revenge, it will only be a lingering sorrow. That sounds nice. If you can do it, can you? It's not something that I can do for myself. Of course, it's easy for me to say that. However, if you see your son marry a woman who loves him as deeply as you do, and give birth to a son as filial as your son, For your husband, I'm afraid there's nothing more beautiful and more important than this. Chapter 25:15. If you can't do it, what nonsense are you spouting? How interesting! The old woman's voice suddenly turned cold. A brat still wet behind the ears dares to lecture me, whoosh! Chu Yang knew that the old woman would lose face. He had succeeded, but he immediately fled, vanishing into thin air with a spacetime art. Two screams rang out at the same time. Wu Zhua's head had been cut off and rolled on the ground. He had even been kicked. Wu Qing's heart was pierced by a sword, and he was lifted into the air by a sword. A silhouette and a demonic silhouette had completed all of this. This was Chu Yang's handiwork before he left. The old woman ignored this and said, "Kid, don't you want to know who wants your life?" "Many thanks, Auntie. I already know that your emotions were fluctuating so much that it almost scared my little heart out of my body." Chu Yang's voice came from afar. Naturally, he already knew who wanted to kill him. Qi Manor's young prince, Huang Fuxian. While the old woman's emotions were fluctuating, he took the opportunity to find out what he wanted through the mind network. The general idea was very simple. Taijing's Wu clan coveted the Wuchou clan's inheritance, so they killed Wuchou's father and hunted down the mother and son pair. Qi Manor was similar to the Wu clan, but with the Wu clan as an example, they were extremely wary of the old woman's witchcraft and did not dare to act. They changed their strategy and decided to save the mother and son pair before slowly plotting their next move. The old woman knew all of this, but it was a fact that Qi Manor had once saved her and her son. Thus, when Huang Fuxian came to threaten them, the old woman suppressed her anger and agreed to help. After learning all of this, Chu Yang naturally had no reason to stay. Of course, this was because the old woman did not make him stay. In the blink of an eye, Chu Yang no longer showed any signs of life. Wu Qing and Wu Zhua had already recovered, but their complexions were as pale as paper, and they seemed very weak. Although Chu Yang's attack had not killed the two of them, it had severely injured them. In particular, Chu Yang had used what he had learned, mixing in extremely vicious witchcraft. If the two of them were not proficient in witchcraft, they would have been dead by now. "Mistress, are we letting him go just like that?" Wu Qing and Wu Zhuo were furious. Chu Yang had already obtained the inheritance of the witchcraft epoch, and had taken advantage of it. Yet, he still wanted to settle a small score with them. "Then what do you want?" The two of them were dumbfounded. That should only be one of his clones. As soon as the old woman finished speaking, not to mention Wu Qing and Wu Chou, even Wu Chou couldn't help but be shocked. It was just a clone. They didn't notice it at all. "I'm afraid that something like this will happen many times in the future." With a whoosh, Wu Zhuo felt a chill on his neck, and Wu Qing felt a sharp pain in his heart for no reason. The two of them looked at each other, and their expressions became even more unsightly. If this happened a few more times, the two of them might really be killed. "He urgently needs the Earth Sovereign's origin. Go and kill a few more people from Qi King Manor." The old woman paused. "It's best if you kill Huang Fuxian's clone. Then we can forget about this score." Her inclination was obvious. Wu Qing and Wu Zhuo were very disheartened. In the end, they could only ask, "Mistress, how can you be sure that he needs the Earth Sovereign's origin?" After all, killing earthly sovereign martial artists from Qi King Manor was no small matter. That was why they asked. "He knows about me. How can he not know about my thoughts?" The two of them were shocked again. Chu Yang had actually dared to infiltrate their mistress's consciousness and find out her secrets. The old woman ignored their shock and called out softly to Wu Chou, "Chou-er, mother." Wu Chou immediately answered respectfully. Chapter 25:16. Mother. Wu Chou was dumbfounded. He stared at the old woman, dumbstruck. At this moment, he had the most intense emotional reaction he had ever had in his entire life. It was as if he was wondering if this was really his mother. How could his mother say something like this? The old woman looked at her son's cold and expressionless face. At this moment, a look of astonishment appeared on his face. His eyes were wide open and his mouth was agape. She couldn't help but feel a wave of sadness in her heart. She reached out her ghostly claw-like hand and caressed Wu Chao's handsome face. "Choer, you're so handsome. Don't worry that no girl will like you. If you can't find one, I'll find one for you." He even managed to trick Duke Jiu's granddaughter. He must have some tricks up his sleeve. Wu Chao's mouth opened even wider. It was as if he could swallow a mountain. "Don't worry about owing him anything. That kid is going to fight against the 6 major factions in Taijing City. With mother looking after him, he will probably wake up smiling from his dreams." As the old woman spoke, her ghost-like hand slowly filled up and became smooth again. It was no longer coarse, and it was no longer ice-cold. There was a faint warmth to it. Wu Chou could clearly feel this change. His heart trembled as he hurriedly replied, "Yes, mother. I will definitely bring aunt back as soon as possible." He said the last few words very quickly, and his cold face turned red in an instant. This made Wu Qing and Wu Zhuo look as if they had seen a ghost. They were completely dumbfounded. They almost slapped themselves to prove it. While the old woman felt sad, she also sensed her son's great joy. She had broken free from her hatred. She was no longer so scary and unreasonable. Her son was almost wild with joy. He actually said the words that should have never come out of his mouth. "It's not too late," she thought to herself. Then, she said gently to Wu Chou, "Show go." "Yes, mother." After Wu Chou agreed, he hesitated for a while. In the end, he told his mother to take care and left. The old woman looked in the direction of her son's departure, and did not retract her gaze for a long time. Beside her, Wu Qing and Wu Zhuo asked, "Mistress, is it worth it to bet so much on Chu Yang?" "Qing Zhuo have you seen anyone who can comprehend the profundities of the witchcraft Tao and enter the witchcraft state in an instant?" As soon as the old woman said this, the two of them fell silent. Tai capital city, Qi Manor. Late at night, Huang Fuxian was still awake. He was waiting for the various forces to be sent out, waiting to confirm whether Chu Yang was dead or alive. To him, this was naturally very important. Only by confirming the life and death of this country bumpkin, Chu Yang, could he carry out the next step of his plan. His next move was very simple: to frame someone. He would frame Wu Su, Wang Lingyun, Xie Xiaobua, and the others for Chu Yang's death. As for Chen Buchuan, he had already ignored him. Although that country bumpkin, Chu Yang, was not popular, Huang Fuxian felt that Chu Yang's words were correct. Chen Buchuan was indeed not popular. The benefits of doing this were also very simple. The divine fragrance talent Shangguanlan was not only Chu Yang's fiancée, but she also loved that country bumpkin. Once it was confirmed that Wu Su, Wang Lingyun, and Xie Xiaobua disliked killing that country bumpkin, the result would be interesting. Killing that country bumpkin, Chu Yang, was equivalent to killing Shangguanlan's husband. Although Huang Fuxian did not want to make such a comparison, there was not much difference between this and the truth. With such a comparison, the matter was very simple. As a woman, Shangguanlan would definitely hate Wu Su and the others for killing her husband, let alone marry the person who killed her husband. In this way, Huang Fuxian's competitors in Tai capital city would be mostly eliminated. In addition, he could even use the country bumpkin's death to put in a lot of effort to track down the murderer. Not only could he show his magnanimity, but he could also gain Shangguanlan's favor. He might even be able to win the heart of the beauty. Chapter 25:17. Chu Yang's death was the best outcome for Huang Fuxian. Chu Yang's survival was naturally not ideal, but it wasn't as if Huang Fuxian couldn't do anything. He could still track down the culprit and display his magnanimity to Shangguanlan, winning her favor. There were always two sides to everything. If there was a good side, there would definitely be a bad side. As long as one could find the good side, no matter how bad the situation was, it wouldn't necessarily be that bad. Huang Fuxian admitted that it wasn't easy to do this, and there weren't many people like him who could always see the good side. In short, nothing was bad, and he could always reap the benefits. In short, there weren't many people who could compare to him because he was always the most outstanding one. Huang Fuxian felt very good about himself. He looked down on Wang Lingyun, Xie Xiaobua, Wu Su, Chen Buchuan, Shangguan Can, and the others from the bottom of his heart. It was just that all of this was hidden in the bottom of his heart and he didn't show it. However, he believed that such a day would definitely come. He would definitely use cold facts to prove this point, forcing Wang Lingyun and the others to have no choice but to admit and accept such a fact. Although they would feel very uncomfortable, they would definitely slowly get used to it. He thought very well. In the darkness of the night, the smile on his face was like a flower blooming in the night, but then he began to hear one bad news after another. The first group that went to investigate Chu Yang's situation was all dead. The second group was all dead. The third group was also all dead. Very good, all three groups of enemies have jumped out. After hearing 3 pieces of bad news in succession, Huang Fuxian was still able to smile. He felt that the 3 groups of people definitely didn't die in vain. The 3 groups of enemies hidden in the dark had been lured out. However, when the 4th and 5th groups of people, the people he sent out were all dead, he could no longer smile, and he couldn't see the good side anymore. At first, he only had a gloomy face, but then he roared in anger, and finally he was completely hysterical. The people he sent out were all dead. Not a single one of them had returned alive. More than a dozen earthly sovereign realm cultivators had died, not to mention the Saint Realm cultivators. Who is it? Who dares to kill the people of Qi Manor? Huang Fuxian's hysterical screams resounded throughout Qi Manor for 3 consecutive days. After the night passed, for the next 3 days, anyone from Qi Manor who was alone outside was assassinated. However, no assassin could be found. This was extremely inconceivable, because this was the supreme capital. This involved the Central State Dynasty's imperial family, Qi King Manor. Who would be so bold? Who would be so deranged? Who would dare to so brazenly assassinate a member of Qi Manor? At first, everyone was shocked, but in the end, it became fear and unease. Later on, some people in the entire Taijing city were in a state of panic. In Taijing city, the people of Qi Manor could not even guarantee their own safety, let alone others. Facing this, the magistrate of Taijing city almost collapsed. Chu Yang had been assassinated, and the mystery of his life and death had yet to be solved. The assassin had yet to be apprehended, and yet another assassination attempt had occurred. He simply wanted to die. The prefectural magistrate of Taijing city frantically searched for the murderer, but the results were minimal. In other words, nothing was done. Have you heard? It was the young prince of Qi Manor who sent people to assassinate that country bumpkin Chu Yang. I've heard about it too. It's said that he wanted to kill 2 birds with 1 stone. He's extremely sinister, but it seems like he's lifted a rock only to drop it on his own feet. That country bumpkin Chu Yang is the fiancée of the divine fragrance girl. She also loves that country bumpkin, so that country bumpkin is almost equivalent to the divine fragrance girl's husband. Chapter 25:18. Huang Fuxian is truly a good schemer. He killed Chu Yang, then framed Wang Lingyun and the others, accusing them of killing the divine fragrance girl's husband. If this is confirmed, then no matter how thick-skinned the divine fragrance girl is, she absolutely won't marry Wang Lingyun and the others. That's right. If Huang Fuxian continued to hypocritically investigate Chu Yang's murderer, it would be easier for him to capture the divine fragrance girl's heart. Unfortunately, Huang Fuxian didn't succeed. Moreover, I heard that the 5 great young masters joined hands and heavily injured him. In the past few days, the people of Qi Manor have been saying that the 5 great young masters sent people to assassinate him. Huang Fuxian seemed to have spoken his thoughts for everyone to hear. Many things actually spread from the mouths of the people, causing a storm in the city. Everyone in the city knew about it. When some people summarized the recent events in Tai capital, they discovered that apart from the assassination of the country bumpkin Chu Yang, the remaining assassinations were all targeted at Qi Manor. This made people even more convinced that Wang Lingyun and the others were working together to punish Huang Fuxian. Wang Lingyun and the others didn't say anything, seemingly tacitly agreeing with this statement. However, Huang Fuxian didn't seem to have any intention of pursuing Wang Lingyun and the others, causing people to feel that this matter was a bit strange. The 6 great young masters of Tai capital all had their own thoughts. Huang Fuxian, who do you think is a fool? Do you think you're the only one pretending to be a fool? Simply laughable. Wang Lingyun, Xie Xiaobua, and the others naturally had to investigate after Chu Yang's death. They naturally also sensed something, so it was true that they wanted to take revenge on Huang Fuxian. However, the 5 of them didn't discuss this matter. They just seemed to have a tacit understanding, which led to this situation. Huang Fuxian naturally also knew this. He knew that he was the victim of his own cleverness, but he was powerless to retaliate. He could only suffer in silence, unable to voice out his bitterness. The Wang, Xie, Chen, and Wu families were absolutely not afraid of Qi Manor. Their foundations were truly too deep, even if Qi Manor was part of the imperial family. Another problem was that this was Huang Fuxian's fault in the first place, so Wang Lingyun and the others were even more unbridled. The last reason was that Huang Fuxian would never be able to find anything that could be used against the 4 families. Amidst the storm in the city, something even bigger happened. One of Huang Fuxian's doppelgangers was assassinated, and he couldn't be more dead. He had completely lost one of his doppelgangers. This was only the beginning. Huang Fuxian's original body had been assassinated as well. His heart had been pierced by a sword, and his head had been cut off. This caused an uproar in the entire city, and it also caused the matter to become even more chaotic. This time, the Wang, Xie, Chen, and Wu families could no longer remain calm. This was not their doing. It was as if someone had deliberately provoked a conflict between them and the Qi Manor, and even the entire imperial clan. At this time, the role of the magistrate of Taijing City showed itself. He once again paid a visit to the Qi Manor, as well as the Wang, Xie, Chen, and Wu families. As the link between the 5 families, he explained the situation clearly and eased the conflict. However, the matter was not over yet. Huang Fuxian was furious and used himself as bait. In the end, he ended up in a miserable state, having his heart pierced by a sword and his head cut off. However, there was no danger to his life, but it was embarrassing. He refused to accept this and tried to take the risk again, but the result was the same. When someone described Huang Fuxian's experience as Lu Diji punched Zheng Guangxi, saying that Huang Fuxian took 3 punches and opened all kinds of shops, people immediately thought of Chu Yang. Could it be that country bumpkin's doing? As a result, Chu Yang's survival was acknowledged by more people. Later on, Huang Fuxian couldn't take it anymore and tried to take the risk again, but the result was the same. He was still pierced by a sword and his head was cut off. Every time he tried to take the risk, his head would be cut off again. Therefore, the assassin in the dark specially came up with a nondescript couplet: eat, sleep, beat Daodu. Chapter 25:19. At first, no one knew who Daodu was. However, later on, everyone knew because the hidden assassin explained it to them. This style was very similar to Chu Yang's. The parrot and the others immediately determined that it was definitely Chu Yang who had done it. Their logic was also very clear. Huang Fuxian had sent someone to assassinate Chu Yang. He had pierced Chu Yang with a sword and cut off Chu Yang's head. Naturally, Chu Yang had to repay him in kind. Therefore, everyone believed that it was the country bumpkin who had done it. To Huang Fuxian, this was a great humiliation. He had actually become Daodu, beaten up by Chu Yang. Therefore, he had continuously tried to test the waters. He had been pierced by the sword and had his head cut off by the saber. However, he had never been able to catch a trace of Chu Yang's hair, nor had he been able to find any useful clues. In the end, Huang Fuxian finally admitted defeat. In order not to be beaten again, he did not dare to take half a step out of Qi Manor. This caused an uproar. As a result, Chu Yang was once again pushed to a great height by the people. Originally, Taijing City was very lively as the imperial examinations were approaching. Coupled with these matters, the situation in Taijing City became even more complicated. Everything under the darkness was surging even more violently. However, things were not over yet. Wu Chao's mother had been dug out. Everyone knew that Huang Fuxian had ordered Wu Chao's mother to assassinate Chu Yang, the country bumpkin, in order to repay him. The shaman epoch was also implicated. In order to obtain the shaman epoch, the Wu family of Taijing City had killed Wu Chao's father and hunted down Wu Chao's mother and son. This was completely exposed. During this period of time, an important person of the Wu family had died. However, the murderer had never been found. Because of this, they immediately determined that it was Qi Manor's doing. This immediately ignited the conflict between the Wu family and Qi Manor, causing a great war to erupt. In the end, everything calmed down. However, no one knew how the Wu family and Qi Manor had reached a compromise. Before the start of the imperial examination, too many things had happened in less than half a month. This made people realize that this time, the imperial examination in Taijing City was completely different from the past. There were probably many people who wanted to take revenge, vent their hatred, and achieve various goals during the imperial examination. It could be said that the imperial examinations this time were extremely unpredictable. After the conflict between the Wu clan and Qi Manor was settled, nothing else happened. However, the imperial examinations were approaching. On the day before the start of the imperial examinations, many examinees gathered to confirm their identities. Chu Yang met Wu Chou by chance. "It wasn't me." This was Chu Yang's first sentence after seeing Wu Chou. What he was talking about was naturally the matter exposed by Wu Chao's mother. He really didn't do it. If he did that, Wu Chou and the others would come out from the shadows and become very dangerous. "It seems that I have overestimated you." Wu Chao's words had turned Chu Yang into a mute. Wu Chou had returned all the disdain he had for Chu Yang. Wu Chou was very pleased with Chu Yang's reaction. However, he didn't show it on his cold face. "Who did it?" Chu Yang was really curious. He was extremely curious. "You're worse than I thought," Wu Chou said coolly and went to confirm his identity. Chu Yang was speechless again. He was very cool at the start, but now it was others' turn to be cool. He didn't need to open his mouth to know everything. It wasn't easy to be so awesome. He opened the mental network and found out everything through Wu Chao's mind. He was very surprised, but also not very surprised. It was actually Wu Chao's mother who did it. The reason why it wasn't surprising was because Wu Chao's mother had used this to successfully trigger the conflict between the Wu clan and Qi Manor. Wu Chou and his mother weren't worried about their safety at all because they had a way. As for what the method was, no one knew. In any case, they had a way. It seems that it's difficult for this imperial examination to be boring. Another thing that had to be mentioned was that the person who hit Huang Fuxian's Daodu was Chu Yang. He had used the mental network to hit Daodu. However, for safety's sake, he had fled as soon as he attacked. Therefore, he couldn't kill Huang Fuxian at all. Instead, he had used up many of Huang Fuxian's scapegoat talismans. Chapter 25-20. Confirming one's identity before the liberal arts examinations was only one of the methods to eliminate the possibility of a substitute examinee. In Taijing City there were many such locations. However, there were a lot of people at every point. The place was bustling with activity and it was extremely noisy. Chu Yang's location was closer to the city gate. The official in charge of the Hall of Literature was very meticulous in confirming the examinee's identity, so it was slightly slower. After separating from Wu Chou, Chu Yang waited for nearly an hour before it was his turn. Next, Chu Yang walked in front of the official and was immediately asked, "Name?" Chu Yang. When these two words came out of Chu Yang's mouth, the official immediately jumped up from his seat, as if his butt had been pricked by a needle. With a swoosh, the surrounding gazes swept over and stared at Chu Yang with bright eyes. They were all very shocked because the name Chu Yang was too shocking. It also meant too much. At least it proved that Chu Yang was not dead. Chu Yang was not surprised by this. His reappearance should have received such attention, so he was prepared. Maybe it's the same name. However, what surprised him was that after the initial shock, the official calmed down and sat back down. Many voices came from the side. "Same name, so it's the same name. That scared me. I thought it was that Chu Yang. I was also shocked just now. If it was that Chu Yang, then it would be incredible." That's right. Because of that Chu Yang, the entire Taijing city is in an uproar now. Hearing this, Chu Yang laughed involuntarily. This was one of his doppelgangers. It was normal for them not to recognize him after changing his appearance. It was also normal for them to have such thoughts. Place of origin: Eastern Wilderness. The official raised his head and stared at Chu Yang. Then he warned, "Chu Yang of the Eastern Wilderness, this is not a joke. Because even if you're not that Chu Yang, and you just have the same name, I'm afraid you won't even know how you died." That's right. Brother, you better be careful with what you say. Could it be that you don't know what it means to be in trouble? They're both in the Eastern Wilderness, and they have the same name. It can't be so coincidental, right? Someone asked doubtfully. Maybe it's that Chu Yang. That Chu Yang is extremely good at changing his body and appearance. The sudden outburst of this sentence caused an uproar in the crowd. It was extremely noisy. Oh my God, it can't really be that Chu Yang, right? Is he really not dead? So, he is the one who cut off Huang Fuxian's head and beat Daodu every day? That's hard to say. An earth-shattering uproar was extremely noisy. The crowd was like a calm sea that suddenly became turbulent, like a tsunami that reached the heavens. However, it quickly calmed down. Everyone's eyes once again fell on Chu Yang. They were waiting for an answer. The official from the One Palace was also completely stunned at this moment. He stared at Chu Yang without moving. "I am that Chu Yang." As Chu Yang spoke, he returned to his original appearance. Whoosh! Immediately, the official took out a portrait with lightning speed and carefully compared it with Chu Yang. At this moment, the crowd was completely in an uproar. It really is that Chu Yang, he really didn't die. My God, he didn't die. This is going to be a big matter. It's not just big, it's going to pierce through the heavens. Once this news spreads, who knows what will happen? He's really bold, actually daring to appear. Isn't he afraid of being killed? Kill him? Are you kidding? Even the 6 great young masters of Taijing City don't have this ability. Do you have the ability? Chapter 25-21. The official confirmed it again and again before asking solemnly, "Are you really Chu Yang from the Eastern Wilderness?" The noisy crowd fell silent as soon as he spoke, as if they couldn't believe it and wanted to confirm it again. "I am Chu Yang from the Eastern Wilderness," Chu Yang said calmly and confidently. "All right, I'll have to confirm your identity carefully. Do you have any objections?" "This is your duty, please." The official hadn't noticed Chu Yang's eccentricities at first contact. Instead, He felt that Chu Yang was like a scholar, cultured, refined, and extremely reasonable. Chu Yang's identity was confirmed more carefully than anyone else's, but the official didn't have any intention of making things difficult for him. Chu Yang's appearance was no small matter. As the person in charge of this station, the official didn't dare be careless. The official was 100% sure of Chu Yang's identity. If he made a mistake, he wouldn't live to see the next day. Therefore, he didn't dare be careless. Chu Yang could even sense that the official's hands were trembling. Therefore, after confirming his identity, he apologized. "I'm very sorry to have caused you trouble. Don't worry, I am indeed Chu Yang. Your confirmation won't be wrong." The official was stunned. He had never imagined that Chu Yang would actually apologize to him. He couldn't help but admire him when he thought about it. Not everyone could do this. The 6 great young masters of Taijing City probably couldn't do it. Therefore, he really hadn't expected that Chu Yang, who came from the eastern wilderness and came from a barbarian land, would be even more reasonable and benevolent than the 6 great young masters of Taijing City. He didn't have the slightest trace of a barbarian. Chu Yang didn't know what the official was thinking. This was his fault in the first place. He had caused trouble and even caused a life-threatening crisis. It was only right for him to apologize. He didn't say much. After making the promise and guarantee, he cupped his hands at the official and was about to leave. However, at this moment, a young man in a green robe walked straight towards him. The crowd was like water, moving to the sides. It was clear that this youth's status wasn't low, or perhaps he was extremely well known. Chu Yang could only stop and size up the newcomer. The newcomer's appearance could be considered to be above average. His face was fair and handsome. His clothes were gorgeous and his 5 fingers were white. It was obvious that he lived like a prince. Among the crowd, this person's height was particularly obvious. He was at least a head taller than the average person. In addition, his right little finger had been chopped off. "You are that Chu Yang." This person was very tall, so it was very convenient for him to look down from above. He was also very overbearing, and his tone was full of disdain and contempt. Chu Yang was already used to such people. He said indifferently, "Please start your performance." This sentence seemed to be very familiar to the crowd, as if they had heard it somewhere before. Many people couldn't help but laugh after hearing it. They laughed, but this person was angry. He said darkly, "You piece of shit, you actually don't know what you are doing after composing a few bullshit poems? Do you really think that you can crush everyone in the literary examination? Dream on. There are many people who look down on me. Who do you think you are?" Chu Yang naturally wouldn't be polite. "You're the only one who comes and goes. There's nothing new about you one after another. You're really disappointing." What he said was truly amazing. However, when people thought about it, they felt that it was probably true. People like Chu Yang, if not tens of thousands, had provoked him. Then what was this person in front of him? They felt that what Chu Yang said was true. Who did this person think he was? Chapter 25-22. My name is Yang Qingshi. Yang Qingshi's name seemed to have a magical power. Once it was said, the crowd reacted strongly. Yang Qingshi from the imperial capital. It should be him. I heard that he is quite famous in the imperial capital. This Yang Qingshi is rumored to be a dark horse in this year's imperial examinations. Yang Qingshi couldn't help but reveal an arrogant look on his face as he heard the discussions of the crowd. However, Chu Yang directly gave him a beating. "I have no interest in knowing your name." After a pause, he added, "Are you done with your performance? If you're not done, please don't annoy me any further. There are too many of you." Chu Yang's arrogance was something that many people had heard of, but not many had seen. This time, they had seen it for themselves. Sure enough, he did not disappoint them at all. His arrogance was boundless. "So what if you are Yang Qingshi from the imperial capital? Do I know you?" So what if you are famous in the imperial capital? Do I look at you? So what if many people think highly of you? Are you at the level that I care about? His arrogance was evident in just a few words. It was deeply imprinted in everyone's mind. It was telling everyone that Chu Yang was just like this. He was just this arrogant. You, Yang Qingshi suddenly gritted his teeth and revealed a resentful expression. This country bumpkin actually dared to look down on him. I am too familiar with this expression of yours. Chu Yang shook his head. How many times do I have to tell you before you understand? You are nothing special. You understand. Country bumpkin, it seems like you want to die. Yang Qingshi was furious. Seeing that he was about to attack Chu Yang, the crowd was shocked and immediately retreated, leaving a large empty space. Chu Yang's face revealed a look of disgust. I look down on you. Is there a problem with this? In this kind of situation, you actually show your dog paws. What are you thinking? I will kindly remind you not to slander a dog. Did a dog eat your IQ? These words were stinging, but after thinking about it, there was nothing wrong with them. The imperial examinations were to determine the identity of the examinees. How could you be so presumptuous? As long as he made a move, he would definitely enrage the One Palace. When Dian didn't dare to let it go. If everyone was like this, wouldn't it be chaos if the safety of the examinees couldn't be guaranteed? Besides, what kind of prestige did the imperial examinations have? Yang Qingshi was indeed not up to standard. That was not to be said. Anyone with a bit of self-cultivation would not have turned into a scoundrel on the street just because of a few words. That piece of shit, if you can get first place in the humanities, I'll cut off my head and let you use it as a chamber pot. Yang Qingshi's actions were forcibly restrained by himself. He gritted his teeth and said these words. Chu Yang smiled. Resentment higher than the sky, hatred deeper than the sea? Are you telling me how angry and resentful you are? Or are you going to tell me that cutting off a head and using it as a chamber pot is a novelty? You're hopeless. I've provoked you so much, but you still can't come up with something new. After saying this, he couldn't be bothered to pay attention to Yang Qingshi anymore. He cupped his hands and said to the crowd, Everyone, I haven't appeared for a long time. I've made you worry. You've moved me. You've made me deeply feel that there is still warmth and love in this world. The people present were speechless. Many of them suddenly understood why so many people couldn't help but laugh when they were talking about Chu Yang. This thing was really like what they had heard. He was indeed a clown among clowns. As soon as his sharp tongue ended, he immediately switched to his clown invincible mode. Son of a bitch, you'd better pray that you don't meet me in the imperial examinations. Amidst the silence, Yang Qingshi's threat came a little late, stiffly inserting itself into the conversation. Chu Yang ignored him. With his hands behind his back, he directly left. Chapter 25-23. The news of Chu Yang's reappearance in Taijing City swept across the entire city like a gust of wind. It made the already bustling Taijing City even noisier, as if it could soar to the ninth heaven by riding on the hustle and bustle. This description was not an exaggeration. Chu Yang's appearance was like a man-made fire that ignited the raging fire in the hearts of the people of Taijing City. It also pushed the flames of gossip to unprecedented heights. Wang Fuxian, Wang Lingyun, Xie Xiaobua, Wu Su, Chen Buchuan, and Shangguan Can, the 6 great young masters of Taijing City, had the same reaction when they heard this news. This country bumpkin, this pile of shit really didn't die. They were not very surprised, as if they had already expected this. If he didn't die, it will be more troublesome to deal with him later. Country bumpkin, let's compete in the imperial examination. I want to see how capable you are. The reaction of these 6 people was much worse. For example, Shangguan Can was probably the only one who wanted to compete with Chu Yang. He wanted to determine the winner and the loser. The other 5 people also had the same mentality. However, they would resort to unscrupulous means to achieve victory. Simply put, there was a very important question in tomorrow's imperial examination, and it was already in the hands of the 6 people. Shangguan Can directly threw it away, but the other 5 people did not do the same. Wang Lingyun and the others did not feel that this would defeat their self-confidence. Chu Yang's talent in literature was his advantage, and their power was their advantage. Talent was only one kind of advantage, but so was power and birth. For Wang Lingyun, Xie Xiaobua, and the others, everything was like this. It was just that many people did not understand this logic and could not accept it. Their thoughts could be roughly understood like this. Why were some people born with more talent and some people born with more noble birth? Because it was bestowed by the heavens. The heavens gave Chu Yang talent, but gave them power and birth. They could not find a reason not to use their advantages. Among the 5 people, Huang Fu Xian's feelings for Chu Yang were many times stronger than the others. As for how strong these feelings were, it was clear after thinking about it. Eat, sleep, beat Daodu. Study, practice martial arts, assassinate Huang Fu. This was one of them. Huang Fu Xian was also very angry. Because of Chu Yang, he had been beaten up by Wang Lingyun and the others, and had been completely blacklisted by Shangguan Lan. Huang Fu Xian no longer had any hope of winning the beauty. He only wanted to make Chu Yang, this country bumpkin, regret being born. Therefore, when he heard the news that Chu Yang was still alive, he had practically turned into a madman, randomly smashing things to vent his anger. It was to the extent that the sound of smashing things could be heard outside the Qi Manor. It was said that there were a few unlucky bastards in the Qi Manor who went to see the King of Hell to reason with him. Huang Fu Xian knew all of this very well. He also knew what he was doing. There was no need for him to hide his anger and resentment. So what if he was venting? So what if he killed someone? He did not need to care. At this moment, what he needed to care about was that question. In tomorrow's imperial examinations, he had to answer better than Wang Lingyun and the others, better than Chu Yang. That was enough. He did not need to be the best. He only needed to be better than the others. Of course, this was only the first step. However, only after defeating Chu Yang in the first step and making Chu Yang feel deeply uneasy would his revenge be more effective. Huang Fu Xian's mind was very clear, extremely clear. This imperial examinations was a very good opportunity to wash away his stain. As long as he took first place in one fell swoop, he would be able to cover up everything else. The 6 great young masters of Taijing knew that Chu Yang was not dead. Shangguan Lan naturally knew as well, and so did the parrot. Chapter 25-24. Waha, this divine bird has long asserted that Pit Chu is a moving pit and will definitely not die. This time, you have discovered this divine bird's foresight and this divine bird's wisdom. This was only limited to Duke Jiu's residence. It was mainly aimed at Shangguan Can. It wanted to show that Shangguan Can was just a fool. Considering that, the parrot had already shown mercy to Shangguan Can with its cheap mouth. Then, it went to Qi Manor and the Wang, Xie Chun, and Wu Manor. It laughed wildly and spouted nonsense. Huang Fu Xian and the others were so angry that they wanted to rush out and tear the bird's beak in half. After the parrot's voice disappeared, they originally thought that the provocation was over. However, who would have thought that this lousy bird would turn around in Taijing City and use various ways to belittle them and elevate itself, causing all kinds of provocative words to enter their ears again. High energy warning ahead. Psychological analysis of 2 of Taijing City's 6 great young masters. Chu Heng's science lesson. The other side of Taijing City's 6 great young masters. Analysis of a dog hole. The parrot's lecture hall. It was said that there was a sea of people and it was very lively. That stupid bird had a cheap tongue and defeated all the heroes. In the end, the parrot also made a couplet. The eastern wilderness's divine bird Chu Hang, despicable. Taijing's two great young masters, brainless, kneel. Horizontal words. The divine bird is invincible. This was considered a divine bird's couplet, but it could also be called a bullshit couplet. However, the effect was very obvious. The 6 great young masters only heard this couplet once, but it was already unforgettable. During this period, the day before the liberal arts examinations, all the examinees who had not arrived. For example, Yang Lini, Rui Sex, talented lady Xiaoxiang, etc. They were all present. The newcomers immediately heard all kinds of interesting things. Rui Sect did not know that Chu Yang was Song Tangming, but he felt that these two bitches were somewhat similar. What talented lady Xiaoxiang was concerned about was that when the scoundrel was focusing on Shangguanlan, he did not forget to write a poem for her. Although she was very pure, she could not tolerate that scoundrel. Other than the divine fragrance talented girl, there was also another woman. For a moment she really wanted to treat Chu Yang as a cow, put a bull ring on him, and completely control him. She would not let this playboy go around fooling around. Because of Chu Yang, this monstrous genius in the literary path, many examinees felt a lot of pressure. Hence, on the day before the liberal arts examinations, they were all meticulously preparing. They were all sharpening their spears at the last minute. Even if they were not fast, they would still look good. Time passed silently in this seemingly chaotic yet orderly manner. Night slowly descended, then quietly receded, and day reappeared. Dong dong dong. When the new day arrived, the drums from the One Palace echoed throughout the capital. People knew that this year's imperial examination was about to begin. In front of the One Palace, after Chu Yang arrived, he saw many examinees rushing into the One Palace as if they were fighting to cross the Dragon Gate. He could not help but sigh in his heart. The Zhong State's imperial examination was very different from the one he had imagined. In his impression, the imperial examination had determined the fate of many people. It was joyful to succeed and sad to fail. Although the imperial examination in the Zhong State had a similar function, what really determined people's fate was not the imperial examination, but the martial arts. The imperial examination was just a better way. If one gave up on this path, there were other paths to take. Chu Yang's appearance naturally attracted the attention of many people. Chapter 25-25. Facing this, Chu Yang was very direct. He cupped his fists and said to everyone, "The country bumpkins are still rampant. Everyone still needs to work hard. Here, I wish everyone victory in advance. In the following assessment, perform perfectly and break through the sky, so as not to disappoint me." This speech really attracted hatred. In an instant, it was unknown how many fierce gazes were directed at him. Chu Yang calmly said, "I'll use the words of one of the 6 great young masters of Tai capital, student Chen Buchuan. Everyone be angry, hate, and resentful. Please do as you wish. Stimulate your potential and display your greatest strength. I'm begging you." He once again cupped his fists towards the crowd and smiled. This scene made many people dazed and absent-minded. Many people could not help but have this thought: is this person invincible? Among the crowd, the pretty boy Wei Xian, Xiao Wanjin, Lu Yunpeng and Xiong Longxiang could only look at each other and smile bitterly. Chu Heng really exploded at the slightest provocation. He did not know how to write the word endure at all. Just the slightest bit of displeasure would cause him to retort. And this retort came in waves and waves. That was all. Wu Chao's cold and dead face could not help but reveal a slightly stunned expression. The person in front of him was really pretentious. So pretentious that even he was surprised. High energy warning ahead. Suddenly, a voice cut in. Along with the sound of fluttering wings, the owner of the voice appeared on stage. Then, he puffed out his chest and said with incomparable passion, "Everyone, let's make the angry storm even fiercer." Of course, this was the parrot. It seemed to have forgotten its words at this point. It cupped its two wings together and said to everyone, "Everyone, hate even more fiercely, hate even more fiercely. Please surpass this divine bird, I beg of you." Boom. The examinees exploded with a boom. It was as if a star had fallen into the ocean. Monstrous waves, earth-shattering tsunamis. Chuyang was not a big deal. This thing's poetry was like the ox ghost and the snake god. He really did have the qualifications to be so impudent. But this lousy bird, what right did it have to be so rampant? Wah-ha! When this lousy bird landed on Chuyang's shoulder, a lot of the clamor died down. This lousy bird didn't have the qualifications, but Chuyang did. And this lousy bird was nothing more than a stimulus derived from Chuyang. Fortunately, this was in front of the Hall of Literature. The liberal arts examinations were about to begin, so the examinees did not dare to act recklessly. If it were any other place, Chuyang and the parrot would have long since been swallowed up by the myriad wrath. If they didn't flee without a trace, then there wouldn't be anything left of them. Naturally, Chuyang's aggro was very successful. In terms of aggro, he felt that he was definitely average, third in the world. Under the supervision of the examiners, nothing happened in the end. The examinees would probably have to wait until after the liberal arts examinations. Chuyang and the parrot entered the examination room without a hitch. As for why the parrot wanted to enter the examination hall, it was naturally because it wanted to participate in the examination as well. Under the pressure of Shangguanlan, the parrot had not only become an elementary scholar, but also a high scholar. Otherwise, it would have to wear flowery clothes when it returned. A life worse than death, worse than a high scholar. This was the mentality of the parrot Chuyang. Dang dang dang. After the bell rang, Chuyang immediately picked up the examination paper. He pretended to be very experienced as he skimmed through the entire paper. He discovered that this was a trivial matter. The questions for the liberal arts examinations were actually about poetry and lyric. He was so surprised that his jaw almost dropped. However, the surprises came one after another. He quickly came to a question. The general meaning of the question was, the use of the martial spirit. In the liberal arts examinations there was actually a question about martial arts. Chuyang was extremely surprised. What made him even more surprised was that this question actually took up half of the points. If the full score was 100 points, then this question would be 50 points. This question is directed at me. Chapter 25-26. The martial spirit was unique to the heavenly spirit world. It played a decisive role in a martial artist's initial cultivation. It could be said that without a martial spirit, one would not be able to cultivate. However, the further one progressed in the martial way, the higher the realm, the smaller the martial spirit's effect would be. Especially after reaching the nirvana realm, after cultivating Fali, it was no longer important whether one had a martial spirit or not. It was fine even if one did not have a martial spirit. This was one of the realities of the heavenly spirit world. Another reality was that the central region was the center of the heavenly spirit world, where the highest level of civilization was. This also determined that the central region's knowledge and research on martial spirits was far superior to other places. For example, the central region was the heavenly spirit world's sacred land of learning. The origin of all learning was spread from the central region to various places in the heavenly spirit world. For example, the eastern region and the eastern wilderness. Therefore, this determined that the eastern region, especially the eastern wilderness, was far inferior to the central region in terms of learning and research. This was also applicable to martial spirit. Therefore, the eastern wilderness's knowledge of martial spirits was not as deep and comprehensive as the central region's. It was also unlike the central region, where there was a complete system of knowledge. According to this inference, Chu Yang's knowledge of martial spirits was naturally inferior to the 6 young masters of the Tai capital, as well as Yang Qingshi and the others. In addition, the topic of martial spirits accounted for half of the total score. Everything went without saying. If this was not targeted at him, what else could it be? Chu Yang's poetry was exceptional. This was already proven. The 6 young masters of the Tai capital were not his match. Therefore, he could only be defeated by the 6 young masters of the Tai capital by playing tricks on other aspects. Of course, there was the other half of the score. However, even if Chu Yang obtained the other half of the score, it would not be of much use. Although the 6 young masters of the Tai capital were not as good as Chu Yang in terms of literature, their attainments were not bad either. The score they obtained would not be too far off from Chu Yang's score. However, the topic of martial spirits was different. I was wondering why the questions on the test papers were generally not very difficult. So this is the reason. The questions on the test paper were not very difficult. This way, the 6 great young masters of Tai Jing and Chu Yang's surprise had been unknowingly erased. It was much easier for the 6 great young masters to obtain a score similar to Chu Yang's. On the topic of martial spirits, they can still play tricks. It's really foolproof. Thinking of this, Chu Yang couldn't help but sneer in his heart. If his answer to the question of martial spirit was not stunning enough, he was certain that his score would be very low. This was because the examiner was definitely on the side of the 6 great young masters of Tai capital. Based on this calculation, Chu Yang's final score was definitely not as good as the 6 young masters of Taijing City. He could forget about getting first place in the theory examination. What a good move to exploit your strengths and avoid your weaknesses. This marshal has seen your methods. Other than sneering and anger, Chu Yang also felt disdain in his heart. Although he was born in the eastern wilderness, his understanding of martial spirits was not inferior to the 6 great young masters of Tai capital. The Destiny Twins' martial spirits allowed him to have a lot of experience in this aspect. Because of the Destiny Twins' martial spirits, his understanding of martial spirits was extremely deep. He had even created the Flood Dragon martial spirit and the Blade martial spirit out of nothing. Therefore, in terms of martial spirits, Chu Yang felt that he was not inferior to the 6 great young masters of Tai capital. No, they must have thought of this. There must be something I don't know. Although he was confident, he was not blind. The other party must have absolute confidence in doing this. However, what kind of confidence was this? Sha sha sha. Chapter 25-27. Country Bumpkin, what can you do even if you find out? Are you going to be angry? Are you going to complain? Country Bumpkin, so what if you're talented in the way of literature? You're going to lose this time. At that time, I want to see how a country bumpkin like you can still be so arrogant. The 6 of them were in the same examination hall as Chu Yang because they wanted to see how Chu Yang would react when he found out. Huang Fu Xian and the other 4 were laughing coldly at him. They were all waiting for him to make a fool of himself. Shangguan Can was furious. What was the point of competing? Even if he won against that country bumpkin Chu Yang, what was there to be proud of? It would be a huge joke if he couldn't beat this country bumpkin. The 6 great princes of Taijing City had eyes and senses. Chu Yang had eyes and senses as well. Therefore, he could sense their expressions and reactions. I'd like to see what the 6 of you are relying on. How can you be so sure that you can defeat me? Chu Yang closed his eyes and opened the mind web. His mind entered the mind web. At this moment there were light spots in the mind web. They seemed to be sitting in an orderly manner, just like the examinees in the examination hall. Then, many thoughts and ideas were transmitted from the mind web. These thoughts and ideas were mostly about the understanding of martial spirits, as well as various kinds of analysis based on their understanding. Chu Yang knew most of them, but there was nothing new. That wasn't enough. Chu Yang used the mind web to silently enter the minds of the 6 great princes of Taijing City. It had to be said that Confucianism had an amazing control over people's mind. Even without the Datong Sutra, the etiquette, morals, and other concepts formed by Confucianism had been engraved in the souls of the 6 great princes of Taijing City. Therefore, it was easy for Chu Yang to enter the minds of the 6 great princes. As long as Chu Yang didn't make too big of a move, he wouldn't be discovered. The martial soul is a primer of the great Tao. It can also be said that the great Tao connects a path to everyone's soul. Following this path, one can find the great Tao behind it, the great Tao of heaven. Chu Yang had never thought of such a martial spirit before. Suddenly knowing this, he couldn't help but feel a little surprised. However, the 6 great young masters of Tai capital all knew about this. The martial Tao is a primer, a path that connects to the great Tao of heaven. After recovering from his shock, Chu Yang immediately began to ponder. He immediately realized that this definition seemed to be correct, and it was because of this reason that the martial spirit had the ability to allow the warrior to absorb the yuan qi of heaven and earth. Following this understanding, one would be able to find the great Tao of heaven by searching for the martial spirit. This was truly an astonishing idea. At least, Chu Yang had never thought of this point before. These things are indeed meticulously prepared. He couldn't help but sigh. Growing up in the eastern wilderness, he didn't have a comprehensive understanding of martial spirit. He couldn't compare to the people of the central state. This was something he had to admit. The martial spirit is a fragment of the great Tao. To be exact, it is a fragment of the great Tao that is bestowed to everyone by the great Tao of heaven. This point made sense. The martial spirit was a fragment of the great Tao, bestowed by the great Tao of heaven. Therefore, some people's martial spirits were strong, while some people's martial spirits were weak. This was just like a person's birth, and a person's birth was determined by the great Tao of heaven. The martial spirit is a great Tao, the embodiment of a great Tao after the extreme simplification. According to this explanation, Chu Yang's saber and sword martial spirit was the Tao of saber and sword. It was formed after the extreme simplification of the Tao of saber and sword. This also made sense, and there were many other points of view that all made sense. The martial spirit can be said to be a world, a reflection of the heavenly spirit world from another world. Chapter 25-28. According to Huang Fu Xian, there was an invisible and undetectable world that corresponded to the heavenly spirit world. This world was a reflection of the heavenly spirit world, thus forming martial souls and allowing everyone to possess martial souls. At the same time, for this world, the heavenly spirit world was also such a world, forming a reflection of that world. In that world, martial souls were formed in this way, and everyone possessed martial souls. Chu Yang was even more shocked. The central continent's understanding of martial souls was far beyond the East continent and the eastern wilderness. To be exact, there was no comparison at all. The difference in structure and understanding of martial spirits were completely different. The impact of such a difference was simply too great. For example, in the eastern wilderness and the East continent, martial souls were dispensable after the nirvana realm. But for Huang Fu Xian and the others, this was probably just the beginning. The difference in understanding formed a huge difference in the result. Should I say thank you to these things? Their careful preparation actually gave me such a great reminder. Chu Yang's heart was almost turned upside down. After he entered the East continent, especially the central continent, he rarely used his martial souls, and this tendency was becoming more and more obvious. It could be said that Huang Fu Xian and the others had given him a head-on blow this time, waking him up completely. It made him realize his own arrogance once again, and also made him feel what it meant to say that there was always someone better than him, and there was always someone better than him. Martial souls are fragments of many eras. This was Wang Lingyun's deepest understanding of martial souls. He believed that there had been countless eras before the heavenly spirit world. After these eras were destroyed, many fragments were formed, and finally, martial souls were formed. It was another shocking statement. Whether it was Huang Fuxian or Wang Lingyun's unique understanding of martial souls, it was not their conjecture. They had ample evidence. The more Chu Yang perceived, the more shocked he was. Faintly, according to this understanding, when he perceived his saber sword martial soul, as well as the flood dragon martial soul, from his martial soul, from his own martial soul, it seemed that every statement had been confirmed. Such a discovery was too great. Once he could figure it out, his strength would undoubtedly increase greatly, and there would probably be earth-shaking changes. Therefore, Chu Yang no longer cared about the results of this theory test. Huang Fuxian, Wang Lingyun, and the others, although they had a deep understanding of martial souls, they had dug too little. But Chu Yang was different. With the Destiny Twins' martial soul, as long as he made such a deduction, the results he obtained were simply unimaginable. Martial souls are fragments of the Soul Dao era. Before the Soul Epoch reached its peak, it was already destroyed. The unique Soul Dao techniques of the Soul Epoch formed the martial spirit. This was what Chu Yang obtained from Xiexiobua's soul. In the previous epoch, the Soul Dao epoch influenced the next epoch and formed the martial soul. Xiexiobu even had a bold hypothesis. In the changes of the world, the Soul Dao era and the Heavenly Spirit World's era had converged at a certain stage and fused together to form the most unique era. According to Xiexiobua's point of view, the destruction of the Soul Dao era was because it wanted to fuse with the current era. The two eras were like two rivers that converged to form a larger river that surged towards the sea. Unimaginable. Chapter 25-29. The martial spirit is the primer and projection of many eras. The martial spirits were the many eras that had been destroyed. They could form a projection in the heavenly spirit world. Wu Su's understanding of martial spirits was similar to Huang Fuxian's, but his view was much broader. He actually regarded the martial spirits that everyone had as a projection of the eras. His point of view was based on the fact that the martial spirit had existed for countless eras before the heavenly soul realm. In this point, he was very similar to Wang Lingyun. Chu Yang had captured all of the 6 young masters' understanding of the martial spirit. He had even captured the one called Yang Qingshi. His point of view was the same as Huang Fuxian's. Because of the question of the martial spirit, Chu Yang could even clearly feel Yang Qingshi's ecstasy. In this point, Yang Qingshi was completely different from the 6 young masters of Tai Capital. From the 6 young masters of Tai Capital, Chu Yang could feel that they had already known about this question. This point was also confirmed by Chu Yang in the minds of the 3 examiners. Everything was as he had expected. This time, it was meticulously prepared and arranged. It could be said that there were no flaws. Of course, this was based on the fact that Chu Yang had not grasped the mind network. I'm afraid that the martial spirit is not like this. Because Chu Yang had a more comprehensive and profound understanding of the martial spirit, he was greatly moved. He had a different understanding of his destiny twin martial spirit and even thought of his identity as a transmigrator. When I transmigrated, before the age of 16, my memories were not awakened. When my memories were awakened, the destiny twin martial spirit was also awakened. I'm afraid that there is a connection between the two. He thought of a possibility. The destiny twin martial spirit was a kind of mark, It could also be a kind of restriction. It was a mark left by destiny on his body. The mark was a kind of restriction on him. Moreover, one was not enough. There must be 2 so that they could supervise each other. Therefore, the destiny twin martial spirit was formed. Based on this conjecture, when his memories were awakened, the Destiny twin martial spirit was also awakened. This could be explained very well, because from that moment on, Destiny began to supervise him. As for the reason for all of this, it was most likely because of his identity as a transmigrator. As such, he was not part of fate, which was why fate held him in such high regard. If that's the case, then everything is too shocking. Who knows, my transmigration might be an experiment conducted by someone to verify something. Chu Yang could not help but shudder. He shook his head fiercely, as if trying to shake these crazy thoughts out of his head. In the examination hall, Chu Yang's huge movements immediately attracted the attention of the 6 great young masters of Tai capital. When the 6 of them saw Chu Yang's pale face, they couldn't help but sneer. When the others saw it, they could only shake their heads. Dang, dang, dang. Unknowingly, Chu Yang's spirit touched the divine cauldron in the two-dimensional heavenly abode. The sound immediately resounded in his soul. No, it should be said that when he felt that the Destiny twins' martial spirits might be a kind of surveillance, a kind of restriction, he immediately wanted to break free from it. Therefore, his spirit directly touched the divine cauldron. Buzz, buzz, buzz. When the divine cauldron moved, Chu Yang's body was like a source of vibration. Rings of ripples surged out of the void. A mystical power immediately rushed out from the divine cauldron and attacked the Destiny twin martial spirit. In an instant, the Destiny twin martial spirit became blurry. Just as the Destiny twin martial spirit was about to disappear, an astonishing power suddenly descended from the void. It clashed with the power of the divine cauldron and was in a stalemate. My guess was actually correct. There is indeed a supreme existence behind the Destiny twin martial spirit. Chapter 25-30. Wah! Chu Yang was greatly impacted by the clash between the two forces. He immediately spat out a mouthful of blood onto the test paper. Everyone was startled and looked over in astonishment. Fortunately, the two forces stopped the moment they clashed. They didn't take any further action. It seemed that the two forces were afraid of obliterating Chu Yang. So, they restrained each other. In this short moment, Chu Yang felt as if he had transmigrated once again, and was reborn as a human. What's going on? The examiner in charge of the examination hall naturally noticed Chu Yang's strange movements and hurried over to check. However, he could only shake his head in the end. The examiner roughly understood that Chu Yang was probably hurt from his anger. However, what could he do? He wasn't one of the 6 great young masters of Taijing City. He didn't have an illustrious identity or status. Even if he was talented in the arts, what could he do? It was impossible for him to obtain first place in the arts examination. The examiner had seen too many people like Chu Yang. Every single one of them ended up in a miserable state. Originally, he thought that Chu Yang was different. However, it seemed that this was the case. That country bumpkin knows that he definitely can't obtain first place in the theory examination and can't take it anymore. If he can't obtain first place in the theory examination, then the deterrence he formed before will immediately crumble and his death will be right in front of him. Opposing the 6 great young masters of Taijing City is equivalent to seeking death. In the mental network, Chu Yang heard too much disdain and ridicule, as well as sympathy and pity. He also heard the complacency and disdain of Huang Fuxian, Wang Lingyun, Xie Xiaobua, and the others. Only Shangguan Can was stunned. He never thought that Chu Yang would suffer such a huge blow. Obviously, Chu Yang's plaything wasn't as glorious and invulnerable as they had imagined. That country bumpkin was in danger at every step. He had to be careful at every step as if he was treading on thin ice. This country bumpkin wants to compete with us. He's at a huge disadvantage. In the end, Shangguan Can could only shake his head. He felt a faint sense of sympathy in his heart. How could he know what had happened in this instant? If he knew, he would probably be scared witless. That thing was actually under the surveillance of fate. He couldn't stand it, and actually wanted to completely break free from the shackles of fate. Master, this student is fine. Chu Yang stood up and apologized, then said, "This student would like to change the exam paper, please allow me." "As long as you're fine." The examiner didn't say much. He couldn't say much anyway. Since it was Chu Yang's request, he naturally wouldn't make things difficult for him. When Chu Yang received the new test paper, many people had already answered half of the questions, but Chu Yang still hadn't written a single word. After such an episode, the examinees present either despised or sympathized with Chu Yang. As for Huang Fuxian and the others, it was needless to say that they were overjoyed. All the pent-up frustrations in their hearts were vented in an instant. The country bumpkin vomited blood in the examination hall. A country bumpkin vomited blood in the examination field. News of what had happened in the examination hall spread like wildfire in Taijing, immediately causing a huge commotion. Many people were mocking and ridiculing Chu Yang as they discussed what kind of exam question had actually caused him to vomit blood. Unfortunately, they could only guess. If they wanted to know the specifics, they would have to wait until the end of the National Liberal Arts examinations or when the results were released. In any case, Chu Yang's vomiting blood in the examination hall had already attracted a lot of attention. The nature of the matter was simply too different from what had been shown. Chu Yang naturally wouldn't explain it, nor did he have the time to do so. He was trying to answer the questions quickly. Chapter 25-31. After Chu Yang understood the views of Huang Fuxian, Wang Lingyun, and the others, it wasn't very difficult to answer this question. He just wanted to integrate Huang Fuxian and the others' views on martial souls and then conduct a systematic discussion and rigorous demonstration. His answer included the views of Huang Fuxian, Wang Lingyun, and the others, so it was naturally more comprehensive and complete than Huang Fuxian and the others. As a result, it was very difficult for Huang Fuxian and the others to surpass him on this question. Even if Huang Fuxian and the others had the secret help of the examiner, it was still the same. It was very difficult for them to reverse the situation. With a clear idea, Chu Yang answered the question very quickly, and at this time, some people had already left. The first was Shangguan Can. To be honest, he was a little dispirited. He was originally full of enthusiasm to compete with Chu Yang, but this kind of competition was too unfair to Chu Yang, and it would be an unfair win for him. "Country bumpkin, you're really slow." Huang Fuxian was the second. He transmitted his voice to disturb Chu Yang, and in the end, he even pretended to be innocent. "I didn't mean to make you spit out another mouthful of blood. Don't misunderstand. Country bumpkin, that mouthful of blood you spat out is really shocking. It will definitely go down in history. That piece of shit, do you know what it means to be ignorant? You want to fight with us? You're not worthy." Wang Lingyun, Xie Xiaobua, Wu Su, and Chen Buchuan were all like that. Speaking of which, these people's thoughts were very similar, and they seemed to be a little impatient to defeat Chu Yang's spirit and ruthlessly humiliate him. Chu Yang originally didn't plan to pay attention to them, but one after another, he couldn't help but be angry. He didn't transmit his voice, and directly said in a clear voice, "Is it cool to hand in the paper early? I'm already past that age, so you guys can play with me slowly." In the examination hall, Chu Yang was very keen to be the first to hand in the paper, or to hand in the paper early. When he was in school in his previous life, Chu Yang was very keen on doing such things to show that he was extraordinary, but he was really past that age. You're a stubborn duck." Huang Fuxian and the others despised and disdained Yi Futian. Many people felt the same way, but some people had strange looks in their eyes. Chu Yang did not pay any more attention to him. Huang Fuxian and the others left the examination hall, and the confrontation between the two sides came to an end. After that, Chu Yang finished all the answers and checked them several times. After confirming that there were no mistakes, he handed them in. At this moment, it was time for the exam. He could be said to have handed in his paper right on time. Have you heard? That country bumpkin Chu Yang vomited blood in the examination hall. I've heard about it too. I'm afraid he must have suffered a great blow. Isn't that obvious? How could he be like this if he wasn't provoked? I dare say with certainty that he has suffered a great internal injury. This time's theory examination is very different from the previous ones. It is obvious that he has been completely schemed against. His anger has hurt his internal organs, which is why he vomited blood. To be honest, the theory examination this time is indeed a bit too much. Even if there's a difference, that's understandable. However, isn't it taking up too many points? After the theory examination ended, all the examinees left the examination hall. Naturally, there were many people gathered together, and there were endless discussions. Most of them were related to Chu Yang. On the contrary, there were much fewer discussions about the theory examination. Chu Yang did not mind and ignored the discussions of the crowd. He walked straight out, but his footsteps could not help but stop. In front, Huang Fuxian, Wang Lingyun, Xie Xiaobua, and the others were waiting for him. Shangguan Can was also there. They each occupied a position, and looked down at Chu Yang arrogantly. They didn't say anything, but it seemed as if they had said everything. Their meaning was self-evident. Country bumpkin, I was wondering how great you were. Turns out you're just SOSO. Such an easy question actually made you vomit blood. How laughable. This voice did not belong to any of the 6 great young masters of Taijing City. It belonged to Yang Qingshi, whom Chu Yang had met earlier. Yang Qingshi charged out and did his best to mock Chu Yang. Chapter 25-32. Chu Yang looked at Yang Qingshi coldly. Anger was surging in his heart. He had only exposed a flaw, and this lunatic had chased after him like a madman. Intolerable! You're a country bumpkin among country bumpkins. You're not very capable. Why aren't you talking? Yang Qingshi saw that Chu Yang was speechless. He was even more pleased and sarcastic. That piece of shit, this is just the beginning. I'll make sure that you won't be able to vomit blood later. Country bumpkin, piece of shit, and so on. Yang Qingshi called Chu Yang all kinds of derogatory names. Under everyone's gaze, he became even more complacent. He felt that he was extremely impressive. Are you done with your performance? Chu Yang was not targeting anyone. He was talking about all the dregs present. He was as arrogant and egotistical as usual, which surprised everyone. Yang Qingshi was directly annoyed. Are you done with your performance? This immediately reminded him of the previous sentence. Are you done with your performance? This sentence was especially hurtful to him. Country bumpkin, vomiting blood is nothing, right? When the results are released, I'd like to see if you can still be so capable. Yang Qingshi gritted his teeth. His face was almost ferocious. Let me give you a suggestion. Chu Yang glanced at Huang Fuxian and the others. Then, he said to Yang Qingshi, learn from those guys and then perform in front of me. After that, he directly walked away with his hands behind his back. Wherever he went, the crowd immediately made a path for him. Yang Qingshi was filled with hatred. That country bumpkin had clearly said that he was far inferior to the 6 young masters of Taijing City and was not qualified to be presumptuous. He did not want to admit this, but he did not dare to say it out loud. That Chu Yang is still so arrogant. Isn't he afraid of dying without a burial place? It's because he's afraid of dying without a burial place that he has to do this. Otherwise, if he shows even the slightest flaw, he will immediately die without a complete corpse. I'm afraid that the country bumpkin was forced to be so arrogant from the beginning, because if he didn't do this, he would die instantly. Speaking of which, this Chu Yang is really difficult. He's really too pitiful. The group of examinees was still in discussion. Many of them felt that they had a deeper understanding of Chu Yang. However, at this moment, a burst of wild laughter rang out. Waha, Chu Heng, this divine bird heard that you vomited blood. This is truly a rare anecdote. The parrot, the pretty boy Wei Xian, and Xia Wanjin all appeared. They definitely didn't believe that Chu Yang had spat out blood. This was such a ridiculous bullshit matter. Chu Heng vomited blood. How rare is that? I hate that I wasn't there at that time. Chu Heng, spit out another mouthful of blood for this divine bird to see. The parrot was full of vigor at once. He pointed at the crowd and said, "High energy warning ahead." Chu Heng vomited blood. Everyone, please pay attention to your little sweetheart and bring your little benches. Shwa. When Chu Yang moved, the parrot let out a miserable shriek. Soon, it turned into a naked parrot without feathers. After that, Chu Yang directly left. Looking at Chu Yang's back, Xia Wanjin and the rest felt that something was amiss. This was because although it looked like Chu Yang, it was actually very unlike Chu Yang. Therefore, they couldn't help but feel a little worried. Chu Heng really vomited blood? Who dares to tell this divine bird that Chu Heng vomited blood? This divine bird will be angry with you. The parrot wouldn't believe that Chu Yang was so angry that he had vomited blood. There was only one reason why Chu Yang had vomited blood. Chu Heng wanted to vomit blood. He had to vomit blood because only by vomiting blood could he trick others. The behavior of the people in front of him was very similar to how they would look before being tricked. Thus, the parrot was even more convinced of his belief. Vomiting blood was nothing. Tricking others was more important. Chapter 25-33. In fact, when Chu Yang vomited blood, there were two people who were most worried about him. One was Shangguanlan, and the other was Shi Danfeng. Especially after the two of them knew the question of the exam, they were even more worried. But what made them puzzled was that the Chu Heng they knew, Shameless Chu, was not so weak. They wanted to know the answer, but they restrained themselves, because their every move was under the scrutiny of many people. If they rashly went, it would only make things more complicated and burden Chu Yang more. As for Huang Fu Xian and the others, they went back to their own homes in a very happy mood. However, their happiness did not last long. As soon as they stepped into their homes, their displeasure had already caught up with them. Each of them had a copy of Chu Yang's answer sheet in their hands. Martial spirits are essentially a world. It is the reflection of another world on the heavenly spirit world. When Huang Fu Xian saw such a conclusion about martial spirits, his mind buzzed. Wasn't this his understanding and understanding of martial spirits? How could that country bumpkin know? Such an understanding of martial spirits was unique to Huang Fu Xian. He could not believe it. How is this possible? How is this possible? How could that country bumpkin know this? Huang Fu Xian could not understand such a thing at all. He was almost going crazy. To him, this was like 10,000 exclamation marks and 100,000 Ys were forcefully stuffed into his brain. The most unbelievable thing was that he found Chu Yang, that country bumpkin, had a lot of knowledge about martial spirits. His perspective was unique, his understanding was profound, and his examples were sufficient. In the end, he was stunned and stunned on the spot. Martial spirits are fragments of many eras. When Wang Lingyun saw such a conclusion in Chu Yang's answer sheet, he was almost the same as Huang Fu Xian. He was caught off guard, in disbelief, and in shock. His entire brain was about to die. He was deeply stabbed. His heart was bleeding, and his body was covered with cuts and bruises. There was not a single place that was intact. He did not know where to put his self-esteem, his pride, and how to face such a reality and avoid such humiliation. Martial spirits were fragments of epoch. This conclusion was based on the fact that many epochs had existed before the heavenly spirit world. In order to prove this point, he had spent a lot of time and effort and consulted many people. In the end, he was able to prove it and make such a conclusion. The martial Tao is a fragment of the Soul Tao epoch. Xieshuobua's own understanding of martial spirits appeared on Chu Yang's answer sheet. He was more or less the same as Huang Fuxian and Wang Lingyun. This was because the Soul Tao epoch and the fusion of the Soul Tao epoch and the current epoch was Xieshuobua's great discovery. However, such a great Dharma idol did not seem to be limited to him alone. That country bumpkin had also seen through it. Wu Su, Chen Buchuan, Shangguan Can, and the others had practically replicated the reactions of Huang Fuxian and the others. If there was a difference, it would be Shangguan Can. What do you mean by vomiting blood? That was definitely a scam. Even that damned bird sees things more clearly than I do, and sees things further. Why do I need to care about him and sympathize with him? I should care about myself and sympathize with myself. After Shangguan Can recovered from his shock, he mocked himself. He had really underestimated Chu Yang. Even if he had made a big move in the examination, so what? How could he stump that arrogant bastard? Huang Fuxian and the others naturally had their own reasons for receiving Chu Yang's answer sheet. After the examiners saw Chu Yang's answer sheet, they did not know how to help Huang Fuxian and the others. There was no way to help them. Chu Yang had completely crushed Huang Fuxian, Wang Lingyun, and the others. Therefore, it seemed that they could only give Chu Yang first place. There was no other choice. Chapter 25-34. It could be said that these examiners were rather cunning. By doing this, they could at least avoid the pressure from the 6 great families. As for the other pressure, they didn't really care. Huang Fuxian directly put a cross on Chu Yang's paper and took first place himself. So did Wang Lingyun. So did Xieshuobua. In the end, only Shangguan Can admitted that he wasn't as good as Chu Yang and took first place for Chu Yang. Yang Qingshi was actually very honored to be part of this group. Of course, he didn't agree with Chu Yang and took first place for Huang Fuxian. Because of this, the 3 examiners immediately felt that Yang Qingshi's participation was a great stroke of wisdom. Whether it was Huang Fuxian, Xieshuobua, or the others, they had all chosen themselves, so it was very difficult to choose who would be first. However, with Yang Qingshi's vote, everything was easily solved. 7 days later, the results were released. Huang Fuxian's name was at the top of the list, followed by Shangguan Can, Wang Lingyun, and the others. They were tied for second place, followed by Yang Qingshi. Chu Yang's ranking was below Yang Qingshi's. A single stone raised 1,000 ripples. Once such a ranking was released, there was an uproar. Huang Fuxian actually took first place in this time's theory examination. They didn't continue speaking halfway as they doubted Huang Fuxian's character. Shangguan Can, Xieshuobua, Wang Lingyun. Among the 6 great young masters of Tai capital, excluding Huang Fuxian, the other 5 are all ranked second. Is there such a coincidence? Or rather, are the 5 of them really so close to each other? The 6 great young masters of Tai capital are ranked first, and Yang Qingshi is ranked behind them. This isn't strange. It's indeed not strange, but, of course, it was just that it wasn't strange for Yang Qingshi to be ranked third, but it was strange for Chu Yang to be ranked fourth. As for why they felt this way, they couldn't explain it. In their opinion, the problem should lie in the question of martial spirits. According to the rankings, Chu Yang's understanding of martial spirits was definitely not as good as the 6 great childs of Tai capital, and even worse than Yang Qingshi. However, according to this, there should be more people who were inferior to Chu Yang, because there should be many people who surpassed Chu Yang in terms of martial spirit comprehension. For example, the Rui child of the Rui immortal sect and the son of the rebel suppressing general, Yang Lini. Both of them were ranked behind Wu Chou. When Chu Yang found out about this, he was not surprised at all because he knew too much. The examiners of the imperial examinations were nothing more than dogs. It would be strange if they were not like this. He wasn't completely unresponsive. He directly said, "Do you dare to post my answer sheet?" No one gave a damn about him. He was also very direct. He found a place and posted his answer sheet. Once again, he announced, "Who can beat me in this year's liberal arts examination in Taijing?" When Chu Yang's answer sheet was posted, it immediately caused a huge commotion. After everyone saw the answer sheet, they only exclaimed in amazement. They felt that this answer sheet was almost perfect and could almost get full mark. If this kind of answer sheet couldn't get first place, second, or third place, then how perfect was Huang Fuxian's answer sheet? This was the question in everyone's heart. If they were Chu Yang, they would definitely not be convinced. After that, Chu Yang spoke for the third time. "The eyes of the masses are as sharp as snow. Do you dare to post the top 3 answer sheets for everyone to judge and grade?" Therefore, everyone's reaction was even more intense. If the Palace of Wen didn't respond, it would be tantamount to confessing without being pressed. It would completely push the Palace of Wen into the teeth of the storm. Chapter 25-35. In Tai capital, Chu Yang could be said to be known by everyone. Every action of his was closely watched by everyone. Hence, the moment he made a move, the Hall of Wen of Tai capital was immediately questioned. Facing this, the Hall of Wen should have made a response. Of course, they could have ignored it. Unfortunately, the decision was not in their hands, because what they did might not be able to satisfy the 6 great young masters of Tai capital. As a result, it was very troublesome. Hence, they once again kicked the ball to the 6 great young masters of Tai capital and let them make the decision. If the 6 great young masters of Tai capital had different opinions, who should they listen to under such circumstances? Moon Viewing Tower. Tower, Lake, Mountain. The Moon Viewing Tower was engraved with dragons and phoenixes. The fallen moon lake was covered in mist and the rolling mountains in the distance. The tower was antique, exquisite, and elegant. The lakeside was filled with orchids and sparkling waves. The distant mountains were faint, as if they were in a landscape painting. Looking at them, it did not seem very realistic. There were good mountains, good water, and good buildings. During the Mid-Autumn Festival, many influential people in Tai capital would come here to admire the moon. Hence, this tower was called the Moon Viewing Tower. Now that it was not the Mid-Autumn Festival, the 6 great young masters of Tai capital naturally did not come here to admire the moon. The 6 great young masters all had faces like jade. Their lips were red and their teeth were white. They were immaculately dressed and had a dignified appearance. The 6 great young masters had good looks and good expressions. If Chu Yang saw them gathered here, his first description would probably be, "This should be an extremely popular male idol group." This was the first time they had gathered together. The 6 great young masters of Tai capital gathered together for the first time. No one was absent and no one was missing. In the past 10 years, such a thing had never happened. However, it happened today. Furthermore, it was because of a country bumpkin. Of course, they could choose not to come, but they all came. The 3 examiners of the imperial examinations, the 3 puppets, directly kicked the ball to them. The 6 great young masters had different opinions, but they had to give the 3 puppets an answer: how to deal with that country bumpkin. This was the reason why they gathered here. It was very ironic from the start. That country bumpkin is really shameless. Wang family's Wang Lingyun was the first to speak. White robes and black hair. His robes and hair fluttered in the wind. His skin was like jade, and there was a faint light flowing on it. His eyes flashed with a crystal light, and at this moment, he could not help but reveal a hint of contempt and mockery. Xie Xiaobo, Wu Su, and the others naturally understood what he meant. Not only is his face big, but his butt is also very heavy. Shangguancan felt that Wang Lingyun's tone was very sarcastic. At this time, he still dared to look down on Chu Yang. He was really convinced. Shua. Wang Lingyun's cold eyes immediately stared at Shangguancan. Without blinking, he saw Shangguancan clearly. Shangguancan's handsome features looked very distinct. His lips were rosy, as if he had put on rouge, but he didn't look feminine at all. At this moment, that pair of intelligent and proud eyes were filled with sharp mockery. You have a problem with that? When that thing sat down, didn't you feel like your waist was going to break? Shangguancan was naturally not afraid of Wang Lingyun. Wang Lingyun was silent all of a sudden. Even though he had tampered with the questions of the written exam, and even though he had gotten the questions in advance, he was still inferior to that country bumpkin Chu Yang in the end. What Shangguancan said about Chu Yang's ass was really a little heavy. Wang Lingyun completely shut his mouth. I don't have time to waste here, do you understand? Huang Fuxian, one of the 6 great young masters of Taijing City, also spoke coldly. He was wearing an ink-colored Confucian robe and a felt cloth on his head. He looked very charming and completely looked like a scholar. Chapter 2536. Chu Yang was not the only one who protested in every imperial examination. But what was the result? Their 6 families held the greatest power in Taijing City. Those noises were nothing but bullshit, or even less than bullshit. Therefore, no matter how big the commotion Chu Yang caused, it was nothing more than a ripple in the moon-viewing lake. It was not even a stormy sea. How could it do anything to them? Naive. Childish. Stupid. Xie Xiaobua, Chen Buchuan, and Wu Su also spoke out. They only felt disdain for Chu Yang's methods. Because if that country bumpkin's methods were effective, that country bumpkin not only thought too highly of himself, but also the people of Taijing City. That country bumpkin slandered Wendian. We can capture him and teach him the truth and cruelty. That seems to be a good idea. Chen Buchuan was dressed like a scholar. He had a long sword at his waist and a folding fan in his hand. He spoke unhurriedly with a contemptuous expression on his face. There's nothing wrong with that. If he wants to be a bitch, then we'll give it to him. If we give it to him, do you think he'll become an obedient dog? Wang Lingyun, Xie Xiaobua, and the others laughed fearlessly. The country bumpkin's methods were so childish that they wanted to laugh. Are you talking about catching a pig? When Huang Fuxian and the others looked at Shangguancan, the smiles on their faces turned cold and gloomy. Shangguancan did not care. He sneered and asked, "Excuse me, where is the pig? Is that country bumpkin a pig? Will he wait for Wendian to catch him? Is his methods really so childish?" At least, Shangguancan didn't think so. He wasn't a pig, and even a pig wouldn't think so. I don't see anything wrong with him. Huang Fuxian had completely lost interest and was about to leave. Of course, his meaning was already very clear. Power was like a mountain, immovable like a mountain. How could a country bumpkin shake a mountain? As far as he was concerned, the situation before him was exactly like this. No matter how much that country bumpkin made a ruckus, how could it shake a single hair on their heads? It was merely wishful thinking. You think you're smart again? Wu Su mocked sharply. Last time, when Huang Fuxian sent people to assassinate Chu Yang, not only did Huang Fuxian lose face, but his relationship with Wu Su was also completely strained. The other 4 immediately began to admire the scene from the side. However, Huang Fuxian merely stared coldly at Wu Su and did not make a move. Everything became meaningless all of a sudden, causing Wang Lingyun to lose interest as well. I can't find a reason to continue wasting my time here. Power and influence were in their hands. No matter how loudly and miserably the country bumpkin cried out for injustice, it was useless. Wang Lingyun wasn't the only one who had such thoughts. The other 5 had similar thoughts as well. Young master, bad news. Wang Lingyun was about to leave. However, he had only taken a few steps when a servant ran in a somewhat flustered manner. When he saw that it was actually his own servant, he was instantly enraged. His gloomy gaze immediately stared coldly at his servant. Vote, vote, vote. The servant was in a hurry and did not notice Wang Lingyun's displeasure and anger at all. Why are you so flustered? What have you become? Wang Lingyun's voice was icy. The servant of the Wang family finally realized that something was wrong and immediately trembled. His flustered expression immediately receded like a receding tide. Speak, what happened? Chapter 25:37. Young master, all 6 of your test papers have been posted and compared with that country bumpkin's test papers. Let everyone choose the first place. Instantly, Huang Fuxian sneered. It's just the same thing, what's the use? Xie Xiubua sneered. So what if it's chosen? The decision is in our hands, we still have the final say on who is first. How can we let that bunch of fools have the final say? Is that so? Among the 6 young masters, Chen Buchuan, who was the first to be labeled as a nobody, sneered, I'm very curious, who posted our test papers? This question touched on a crucial point. Swish! Huang Fuxian, Xie Xiubua, and the others' expressions changed instantly. The palace of Wen posted their test papers? They immediately thought of an even more critical problem. In this way, wouldn't it be easy to tell who was a dog and who was a human at a glance? If their test papers were compared with that country bumpkin's, they would be able to tell who was better and who was worse. Furthermore, there was another important question. Could it be that the palace of Wen had betrayed them and was no longer on their side? Impossible, there was no reason for that. While they were still in a daze, Huang Fuxian and the other servants came to report. Soon, the situation was very clear. The palace of Wen naturally did not betray them. It was that country bumpkin who provoked them and questioned the palace of Wen. At the same time, he did something else. He posted the test papers of all 6 of them outside Taijing City. In an instant, all 6 of them realized a problem. The ruckus caused by the country bumpkins seemed to be very different from the other examinees who had caused trouble before. They seemed to be very organized and disciplined, and had properly planned out their actions before taking action. That country bumpkin definitely had other tricks up his sleeve. However, the 6 of them were puzzled. How did that country bumpkin get their test papers? From this, they thought of a very big possibility. That country bumpkin in the palace of Wen did not seem to have nothing. With all these factors added together, the situation seemed to be very bad. That country bumpkin was chosen as the first place. The truth seemed to be revealed all of a sudden when it was chosen by the people. The situation seemed to be quickly evolving into a worse situation. The news that the 6 of them understood was actually very detailed. The matter had spread quickly from outside the city to inside the city. At this moment, the city was already extremely noisy. It could be said that the ugliness of the 6 of them had been completely displayed in front of everyone. The imperial examinations, under-the-table operations, cheating, and so on were also completely unfolded in front of everyone. This is bad, this is too bad. After everything was made public, the ugliness of the 6 of them would be known by everyone. Where would they put their faces? Wouldn't they be ridiculed to death? Even if that group of fools chose him as first place, so what? The results of the imperial examinations are ultimately decided by the palace of Wen, and not by those lowly people. Huang Fuxian's reputation had already been ruined, and he seemed to have decided to go all out. He was acting very tough. He wanted to tell Chu Yang clearly, so what? Can you overturn the heavens? A lowly person is a lowly person. I will humiliate you in front of everyone in the world. What can you do? I agree. Me. They are? Li. Is. The. If you guys are like this, then I'll follow. With a few people taking the lead, Chen Buchuan, Wu Su, and the others also agreed. Sorry, I'm not in the mood for that. Shang Guanqin realized that he had met a group of idiots. When the test papers were posted, they had already lost their underwear. They were still angry and did not know how to stop their losses. Instead, they chose to make mistakes again and again. His unsociability made Huang Fuxian and the others angry, but all they could do was sneer. The 6 of them dispersed, but before they reached home, they received strange news. Among the 7 test papers, the first place was no longer Chu Yang, but Huang Fuxian. Chapter 2538. Huang Fuxian was the first. Wang Lingyun was the second. Xie Xiubo was the third. Chen Buchuan, Wu Su, and Shang Guanqin were in the 4th, 5th, and 6th places respectively. Chu Yang was at the end of the 7th place. This trend was becoming more and more stable, and it was almost unshakable. Because of this, 5 of the 6 young masters of Taijing City could not help but sneer. So what if the crowd decided the first place? Was it useful? It was useless. They were the masters of Taijing City. Who dared to offend them? Who dared to offend them? Pointing at a deer and calling it a horse, calling black white, there was nothing strange about this. In short, what bullshit justice was in people's hearts? That was just the wishful thinking of a country bumpkin and his ignorance. Because justice was never in people's hearts, but in supreme power. Therefore, they sat on the fishing platform and waited for Chu Yang, the country bumpkin, to be severely defeated, powerless and helpless. Finally, he fell into deep despair. This was the result of going against them. Shang Guanqin was the only one who didn't think so. Although he thought so at first, he felt that something was wrong when he heard the wild laughter of that damn bird. After all, justice was in the hearts of the people, and this sentence didn't come out of nowhere. Waha, Chu Hang is indeed Chu Hang. He is really good at playing. Therefore, this sentence kept floating in Shang Guanqin's mind. This was especially so when the parrot became alert and didn't laugh wildly again. This is not right. This is definitely not right. Shang Guanqin felt that something was wrong, but he could not figure out what was wrong. He thought hard. When the parrot appeared in front of him in layers of flowery clothes, he suddenly realized that it was not this damn bird that leaked the secret, but someone deliberately reminded him. His sister, Shang Guanlan. That damn bird was wearing flowery clothes and looked like a super big dumpling. When it saw Shang Guanqin, it was so angry that it jumped up and down. It looked funny and cute. At first, because of Shang Guanlan, the parrot was very civilized when it scolded Shang Guanqin. It politely called Shang Guanqin rottenwood, elmwood, and so on. In the end, it was so agitated that it forgot everything. It directly activated the 3-character classic and scolded all 18 generations of Shang Guanqin's ancestors. The broken bird was dealt with miserably by Shang Guanlan. He cried out that he was wronged, saying that the well in Shang Guanqin's mind was too solid, and only 18 generations of ancestors could shake it a little. In the end, he even used this example to prove that Shang Guanqin could be stupid, but he could at least understand bird language, right? Don't you know how to do things first and then think foolishly later? Shang Guanqin immediately smacked his own head so hard that it felt like his skull was going to shatter. Then, he rushed out like a madman and used all his means to order people to vote for Chu Yang. During this process, Shang Guanqin frequently heard the words "the emperor's new clothes" from the whispers of the crowd. However, he did not understand what these words meant. Time was tight and the mission was urgent. He did not have time to pay attention to it. He was busy pushing Chu Yang's ranking up. After that, he began to try to understand the meaning of the words "the emperor's new clothes." At the same time, he also tried to figure out why these words had been circulating along with the incident. Many people were secretly talking about this damn thing. In the end, Shang Guanqin caught a person. After interrogating him, he finally understood what the so-called, the emperor's new clothes meant. The general meaning was that there were two things that deceived an emperor of the Confucian era. They said that they had supreme craftsmanship and could make unparalleled clothes. The emperor believed it, so all his ministers also believed it. Chapter 2539. Is this story reasonable? Is there such a stupid emperor and such a stupid minister in this world? Shangguan Can was very skeptical of the logic of this story. This story was simply absurd. Thus, he was filled with disdain and did not believe it at all. However, when he compared this story to the situation in front of him, he was immediately dumbfounded. He even felt as if he had narrowly escaped death. Fortunately, my grandfather is Duke Jiao. Fortunately, my older sister is Shangguan Lan. Shangguan Can's forehead was covered in cold sweat. If not for his grandfather reminding him beforehand so that he would no longer look down on that fellow called Chu Hang, if not for his older sister reminding him, he would probably be that extremely stupid emperor and laughable minister of the Confucian era. Without comparison, there would be no sense of superiority. When he thought of the tragic end of Huang Fuxian and the others, he couldn't help but laugh. In the future, as long as the words the emperor's new clothes were mentioned, Huang Fuxian and the others would definitely be angered half to death. The simple story of the emperor's new clothes was very popular, but it did not have much of a secret. As more and more people learned of it, it also reached the ears of Huang Fuxian, Wang Lingyun, Xie Xiaobua, and the others. Just like Shangguan Can, Huang Fuxian also felt that this story was extremely absurd and illogical. There was absolutely no such fool in this world. Otherwise, this world would be too cute, so cute that it was unbearable. At first, he only felt disdain, but he quickly realized that this simple story was clearly talking about him, a fellow who prided himself on his intelligence. The emperor of the Confucian era corresponded to him, Huang Fuxian. The emperor's new clothes corresponded to his first position in the Confucian era. The emperor's ministers corresponded to the Confucian palace. The imperial court corresponded to the people of that eccentric emperor. There seemed to be nothing wrong with this. He, Huang Fuxian, was no different from that eccentric emperor. He was already wearing a piece of clothing that did not exist and walking around naked in front of everyone. He was deceiving himself and others. Put on. Huang Fuxian's vision darkened and he fell to the ground. His legs kicked against the ground, and he fainted as if he was dead. Qi Manor was instantly thrown into chaos. At this moment, everyone in Qi Manor seemed to have heard a thud from the Xie, Wu and Chen family. It was as if someone had also heavily fallen to the ground. The people of Qi Manor quickly confirmed that because of the story of the emperor's new clothes, the ordinary sounds they had heard were real. Xie Xiaobua, Wu Su, and Chen Buchuan, the three noble young masters, had all suffered from the same illness as their young masters. They fell heavily to the ground, and with a kick of their feet they were unconscious. Only the Wang family's Wang Lingyun, known as Little Wang Jianqiang, also known as Shao Chang, also known as Cockroach, didn't faint at the first moment. However, after hearing this sentence, he also fainted with a thump. Shao Chang, don't die. There was a long section after that. Someone in Taijing had specially performed this section. The death of Shao Chang was more painful than the death of his wife. It was truly moving to tears. The heavens were moved. It wasn't that they weren't strong, but that they were too shameful. Huang Fuxian fainted. The five of them felt that they couldn't be blamed. If it were anyone else, they felt that they wouldn't be able to withstand it. The emperor's new clothes had analyzed their thoughts and thoughts too deeply. It had also vividly portrayed their ugliness in detail. Pride and self-esteem were unbearable. Chapter 2540. While the five of them were temporarily hiding from the cruel reality by fainting, the Prince of Qi was enraged. As a result, the three main examiners of the imperial examinations, the three little dogs, were directly implicated. They were removed from their positions and investigated, and became the main inventors of the joke. All the blame was placed on them. The three main examiners were on the verge of tears. They were doing things according to tradition, so why did something go wrong this time? They were extremely unfortunate and sorrowful. After the three dogs left, three new dogs took their place. The three new dogs immediately set things right. In the name of justice and conscience, they married Chu Yang and became the champion of the imperial examinations. The situation was completely reversed. Ha ha! Because of this, laughter could be heard everywhere in Taijing City. Then, something even more laughable happened. That country bumpkin named Chu Yang sent letters to Duke Zhou's residence, King Qi residence, Wang, Xie Chen, and Wu residence, as well as the prefectural magistrate of Taijing City. He protested and refused to accept the title of champion. His reasons were sufficient. He had no background, no talent, no looks, and no morals. He was just a lowly person. Furthermore, not only were his shoulders small, his guts were even smaller. The title of champion was too high for him. He was worried that he would go crazy from joy. Thus, the basis for his actions was built on a story. Fan Jin passing the imperial examinations. Fan Jin passing the imperial examinations seemed to be a powerful theoretical foundation that gave Chu Yang endless strength. It allowed him to remain unscathed despite all kinds of resistance. Chu Yang's actions left everyone dumbfounded. Then, they burst into laughter. This guy called Chu Yang is representing the poor masses against the powerful. He has already achieved an epic victory. But, he's still not satisfied. He's still trying to compose and eulogize an even greater chapter. Because of Chu Yang's dissatisfaction, the matter didn't calm down and it implicated even more people, such as Duke Zhou. This brat actually dragged me down as well. After saying this, Duke Zhou finally couldn't hide from Chu Yang's protests and made a move. How could Zhou Gong not know about the shenanigans of the imperial examinations? However, he was also helpless because if he touched those people's cake, those people would fight him to the death. However, this time, those people were desperately begging him. This made him feel very good. He waved his hand and commanded in an awe-inspiring manner, "Retake the exam." After hearing this, many people finally understood that this year's arts examination was unfair from the very beginning. For example, arbitrarily changing the exam questions did not solve the root cause, so the result would definitely be unfair. Therefore, many people also understood why Chu Yang was still making a ruckus and protesting. What he was doing was not only targeting this time's imperial examination, but also trying to fundamentally change the current situation of the imperial examination. He could be called the spokesperson of the poor and those without background, as well as a bullfighter. Because of this, his trickery was almost deified, and he was revered as the trickster god. Using the emperor's new clothes, Fan Jin passed the imperial examinations and so on. After that, the matter completely stopped, and he once again strode into the examination hall with his head held high, starting a new battle, starting a new chapter. In this new chapter, the trickster god Chu Yang continued his self-praise. First in the theory examination. Practice is the only way to test the truth. Facts have proven that this marshal is indeed first, crushing everything in his path. All resistance is futile. Waha! Chapter 2541. Because of the re-examination, time was very tight. On the 5th day after the re-examination, the Wushu test began. The imperial examination in Taijing City was originally very grand and lively. This year, because of Chu Yang and his relationship with the 6 young masters of Taijing City, the combat examination this year was much noisier and livelier than the previous years. The grandeur of the scene, the number of people, the tightness of the security, the sturdiness of the arena, etc. There was no need to elaborate. All of these far exceeded what Chu Yang had encountered before. On this day, when the sun rose, there was already a sea of people in the combat examination grounds. The clamor of the sea of people was like the sound of waves. Apart from the ordinary people, many of the influential people of Taijing City were present. For example, Prince Qi of the Qi Manor, the family heads of the Wang, Xie, Chern and Wu families, as well as Shangguan Lan's father, Shangguan Yun, were all present and sat in the best seat. Even though it was early in the morning, when the sun shone on the skin, one could faintly feel a trace of scorching heat. There was no wind. It was stuffy, extremely stuffy. In the huge martial test field, it was fortunate that everyone was a martial artist. This kind of stuffy heat was not a problem for them. Their martial arts cultivation had long since allowed them to get rid of these worries. If they wanted to find a cool and refreshing feeling, this was actually very easy. The first round of the combat examination, the first round, Chu Yang. On the main arena, when the referee of the combat examination called out Chu Yang's name, it was as if a huge wave had been set off in the sea of people. In an instant, there was a loud rumble and the clamor shook the heavens. The first round is the god of deception. This is causing trouble. The god of deception is on stage. Even if nothing happens, he can still cause trouble. That's right, that's right. The hosts of the combat examination really know what I'm thinking. The god of deception is already on stage for the first round. The way people addressed Chu Yang had completely changed. They no longer called him a country bumpkin or a country bumpkin, but the god of deception. This naturally had something to do with the previous incident. Although the imperial examination was not the only way for the people of Middle State to get promoted, it was still related to the interests of many people. The 6 young masters of Taijing City were so arrogant. Even after being exposed for cheating in the imperial examination, they were still so arrogant. Naturally, people could not stand it. Because of this, Chu Yang was able to succeed. Otherwise, even if he had more ideas, it would be useless. He had also recognized the power of people and how great they could be. People had a good impression of Chu Yang because of the fight between him and the 6 great young masters of Taijing City. Many people could empathize with the oppression of the rich and powerful. Therefore, they unconsciously put themselves in the shoes of Chu Yang, as if they were themselves. Brother Shangguan, your future son-in-law is not simple. Amidst the hubbub of excitement, King Qi couldn't help but say to Shangguan Lan's father, "Of course. He's my future son-in-law. How bad can he be?" Shangguan Yun was proud and mocking in his heart, but he did not show it. He said coldly, "Future son-in-law? He's still far away. He wants to marry my daughter? It's still wishful thinking." How could Shangguan Yun not understand King Qi's thoughts? Therefore, he gave a perfunctory reply. "No matter what, this Chu Yang is indeed amazing." The Wang family head also spoke. The people beside him also spoke one after another. All of them were praising Chu Yang. Shangguan Yun casually dealt with them like a loach, and no one could get hold of his weakness. King Qi and the others naturally had their own thoughts. This lowly person must not be allowed to live. If he continues to grow, he will definitely be a disaster. This person is amazing. He must be killed as soon as possible. If this combat examination cannot be suppressed, then there's no need to wait anymore. Chapter 2542. Chu Yang knew nothing about this. When he heard the judge call his name, he flew into the air and landed on the main arena. The martial test arena was huge. Naturally, there was more than one arena. Once the martial test arena started, there would be many arenas for the martial test arena. However, the first round was an exception. According to the tradition of the imperial examinations, The first round was to create a buzz. The reason why there was such a tradition was because at the beginning of the imperial examinations, there were not many people who participated in the imperial examinations. Therefore, there was a need to create a buzz at the beginning. Such a custom was passed down from generation to generation. Chu Yang was the most eye-catching person in this imperial examinations. Naturally, he was the most suitable person to create a buzz. Everyone. When Chu Yang appeared on the stage, he cupped his fists and said with a smile, "Everyone, long time no see. I even miss you. I miss all of you." Ha ha. The entire martial test arena burst into laughter. Chu Yang, this clown, started to create trouble as soon as he appeared on the stage. The imperial examinations had been held for so many years. Who would be as shameless as him? This, "I miss all of you," was obviously very inappropriate. Listening to the martial test arena, it seemed that Chu Yang had appeared on the stage many times. "In view of my handsome appearance, I am a little white dragon among the waves. Everyone, please make a guess. Who will be lucky enough to be my opponent?" When these words came out, it caused a huge reaction from the crowd. Which unlucky person will meet the god of pits? I am really looking forward to it. It's good that we know. I can confirm that many people are praying that they will not meet the god of pits. Do you think it will be one of the 6 great young masters of Tai capital? He will directly go on the stage and then explode. Everyone was looking forward to this martial test arena. At the beginning, there was a lot of discussion and it was very noisy. This should be impossible. The 6 great young masters of Tai capital will definitely not personally go on the stage before they find out the god of pits. The god of pits is only at the peak of the nirvana stage. What are they afraid of? That is the god of pits. Are you sure that he is only at the peak of the nirvana stage? That's true. Anyway, I don't care about that. I'm here today to see the deceiver god play cheap. Can't you see that I've already activated the deceiver god's cheap and funny aura? As soon as this person said this, the people around him immediately burst into laughter. Yang-san, please come to the stage. At this moment, the referee in the main arena had already called out another person's name. The instant the crowd quietened down, a voice of complaint rang out. How could it be me? Why am I so unlucky? I actually met the god of fraud in the first round. Yang-san's gloomy voice came out, and the people there immediately went crazy with joy. With a whoosh, although Yang-san was cursing, he was very straightforward and directly flew onto the arena. When he got onto the arena, his sudden movement immediately made everyone present stunned. With a plop, Yang-san directly knelt down in front of Chu Yang and said loudly, "God of deception, please don't deceive me. If you want to screw me over, please don't screw me over so badly." Chu Yang couldn't help but rub his nose and ask, "Am I that scary?" "Yes," Yang-san said with certainty. "According to the broken bird law, you are a huge pit. If you are not careful, you will be crushed into pieces. You will not be able to live in this world. It is simply too scary." "Is there a need for that? Men have gold under their knees." Chu Yang pointed at Yang-san's knee. Yang-san didn't take it to heart. He chuckled and said, "Men have gold under their knees, but you can still kneel to the god of deception. Using the fucking idiom, you don't know a pit until you see the pit god, and you don't know how to be cheap until you worship the pit god." Chapter 2543. Chu Yang couldn't help but touch his forehead. Was it because his influence was too great, or were there too many scumbags in this world? He was already a little silly and couldn't tell. During this period of time, a lot of things had happened, and no one knew how to form a consensus. Chu Yang had cheated the 6 young masters to the point where they had nothing left to wear. This should be due to the parrot's great contribution. The so-called broken bird's law was the parrot's law. After Yang-san's rampant laughter, He stood up and immediately restrained his impudence. He stretched his neck and carefully asked, "God of cheats, this little cheater wants to fight a few rounds with you. Do you have to be so careful?" Chu Yang had already asked 3 times, and this Yang San really wanted to send him to the altar to eat incense. He really couldn't get used to this kind of worship for a while. Yes, absolutely. Yang San was like a chick pecking rice, nodding and saying, "According to the broken bird's law, you are a cheater, an invincible fool, so I have to be very careful." "Yang San, your dog fart." It was not Chu Yang's voice, but the parrot's. It flew into the air and angrily poked Yang San. "Yang San, this divine bird wants to remind you, this is the divine bird's law, not the broken bird's law. If you dare to say something wrong again, I will strip you naked and hang you up to dry." According to the broken bird's law, the number of times a broken bird is stripped naked and hung up to dry is the most. Ha ha! Yang San's words made many people laugh like crazy. There was no need to mention Xiao Wanjin and the others, even Wu Chou couldn't help but laugh. He had never seen such a bizarre thing before. There was already a lunatic on the stage, and then there was another lunatic on the stage, and then there was another lunatic below. 3 lunatics making the world laugh. "What do you know?" the parrot said complacently in the air. "According to the divine bird's law, this is glory. Why don't you think about it? Not everyone has the honor of being stripped naked by Pit Chu and hung up to dry. Do you understand?" The parrot's crooked tricks came out again, causing people to burst into laughter again. "Let's do it, the 2 of us are about to become 2 cheaters." Chu Yang helplessly shrugged. "You're a joker, and you're the one with the highest cultivation base among all the jokers." Yang San looked like he had foresight, and said very solemnly, "I already knew this 800 years ago." Hee. Chu Yang didn't hold back anymore. He laughed sinisterly and said, "So, you must be 800 years behind. Then, why don't you guess what will happen later?" "Of course I know." Yang San puffed out his chest proudly. Whoosh. Then, he took advantage of the fact that Chu Yang wasn't paying attention to him, and rushed out of the arena as if he was fleeing for his life. Then, he landed outside the arena and repeatedly yelled, "Scammer Chu, I admit defeat. I completely admit defeat. Don't get angry. Yang. T. Phew, that was close." Yang San breathed a sigh of relief under the ring, and said with lingering fear, "As expected of the god of cheating, I was under a lot of pressure just now. Fortunately, I was quick-witted. Waha." Chu Yang was completely speechless. He was very sure that he had met a cheater, a kindred spirit. Ha ha. The whole audience burst into laughter, and because of this scene, Chu Yang's next matches were very smooth. 7 days later, he directly advanced to the top 50. In the first match of the top 50, after he went on the ring, he finally met someone who hated him very much, Yang Qingshi. After the 2 of them went on the ring, Yang Qingshi directly set up the chariot cannon and made a posture that looked like he was going to attack immediately. He did attack immediately, but it was a verbal attack. Chapter 2544. That piece of shit, I told you before that you'd better pray that you don't meet me in the arena. But it seems that you didn't pray properly. Yang Qingshi's expression was arrogant and his eyes were contemptuous. His voice was bitter and cold. Every syllable seemed to contain endless fierceness. It was as if there were countless ferocious ghosts hidden in every syllable. Mountains of swords and seas of fire. This kind of resentment, this kind of gloominess, all of a sudden, it was as if winter had arrived. The stuffy and hot atmosphere seemed to have turned cold all of a sudden. The extreme clamor in the arena seemed to have been completely frozen in an instant. Silence. The arena suddenly became so silent that even the sound of a pin dropping could be heard. Chu Yang felt all of this, but his mood did not fluctuate. If there was a little shock, it would be that Yang Qingshi's resentment towards him was so deep that even if all the water from all over the world poured into it, there would not be a splash. He really did not understand this kind of resentment. Before this, he and Yang Qingshi had only met once, and he had only ridiculed Yang Qingshi. But the hatred between them was as irreconcilable as the death of one's father. Yang Qingshi, you're very stingy. You're so stingy that you can anger yourself to death. How interesting! On the arena, Chu Yang had his hands behind his back as he slowly paced back and forth. Or rather, your self-esteem has been hurt, so it exploded into such resentment and resentment. He thought of this again, and then couldn't help but shake his head. He said to Yang Qingshi, "You're really not up to standard, and there's nothing wrong with what I said. When you can't do whatever you want, when you can't be arrogant, when you can't get people's approval, and when you can't enjoy people's shock and admiration, you'll be flustered and exasperated. Because I'm the one who caused all of this. Naturally, I deserve to die. Am I right?" Chu Yang felt that he had thoroughly analyzed Yang Qingshi's mentality, and could not help but laugh even more mockingly. Yang Qingshi became even angrier, and was about to roar out in anger. But Chu Yang seized this opportunity, and spoke to everyone first. "Everyone, what's the matter with you? Is winter really coming, and you're going to hibernate or what? It's so quiet, I'm so disappointed." Ha ha. When people heard Chu Yang's words, many burst into laughter. It was as if the frozen world had thawed in an instant. There was even an endless amount of magma surging out. The atmosphere was extremely hot in an instant. This Yang Qingshi is merely a first-order true saint. His cultivation is even lower than mine. I don't even know why I was so surprised just now. No wonder I was ridiculed. The god of deception wants to fight a saint in the Nirvana realm. He wants to show off his might. I heard that in the Sage Monarch College, there's a monster called Song Tangming who can already kill a saint in the Nirvana realm, creating an unprecedented miracle. I'm afraid that the god of fraud isn't convinced by that Song Tangming, so he wants to do something too. That's right, that's absolutely right. King Shen is clearly expressing his dissatisfaction, and in this world, only he can be supreme, and only he can make people worship and worship him. My thoughts are definitely not wrong. This time, there seemed to be a lot of clowns in the crowd, or many people were turned into clowns by Chu Yang. When the gigolo Wei Xian heard this, he couldn't help but curse inwardly. Shameless, really shameless. He wants to surprise people twice with the same kind of awesomeness. A Nirvana realm martial artist killing a saint. Pit Chu had already done it before. This time, he had changed his identity and changed the venue. He wanted to give people a big surprise once again. In Wei Xian's opinion, Pit Chu was really shameless. Chapter 2545. There was a lot of laughter, a lot of relaxed and mocking scenes, and so on. All of this made Yang Qingshi clearly and deeply feel the contempt and disdain of Chu Yang, a piece of shit. That piece of shit, a Nirvana realm fighter against a saint? You're not worthy. Yang Qingshi exploded in anger. He pointed his finger at Chu Yang and said coldly, "Wait a moment. I want to see if you can still laugh, you lowly bastard." "You think I'm worse than Song Tangming?" Chu Yang asked with a smile, rubbing his chin. "Song Tangming has become your benchmark, right? Haha." After hearing that, Yang Qingshi suddenly looked up to the sky and laughed. He said, "Even if Song Tangming of the Saint Monarch Academy was standing in front of me right now, what could I do? Do you think I'm an ordinary saint?" His words were full of contempt. Chu Yang deeply felt the contempt. Although the mind net was closed, he could still feel the contempt in Yang Qingshi's tone, the contempt for a saint. This was strange. Why did Yang Qingshi despise a saint? He was a saint himself. "You little thing, be careful when you speak." Chu Yang reminded him with a smile. "Song Tangming is also a monster. Don't talk about how ridiculous your arrogance is. Aren't you afraid that people will see your ignorance and shallowness? That's right. Who is Song Tangming? He violently broke through the 18 stages of the Saint Monarch Academy's path of strange doors, killed a saint when he was in the Nirvana realm, stepped on the son of the counter-suppressing general, and defeated the Rui child of the Rui immortal sect. Who is he? He's not someone you, Yang Qingshi, can look down on. Below the arena, someone immediately spoke up. Yang Qingshi, the god of deceit, was right to remind you. Be careful of boasting. You'll hurt your tongue if you talk too big. Song Tangming is more than that. He continuously comprehended the great righteousness. In a short period of time, he even comprehended the immortal Qi, the state of an immortal, and the combination of Confucian and immortal. Yang Qingshi, you're not worthy of challenging such a peerless talent. Yang Qingshi, what are you talking about? Be careful of your mouth. Someone like you is nothing in front of Song Tangming. Initially, no one had heard of Song Tangming from the Saint Monarch Academy. However, after the news of the Saint Monarch Academy spread, the people of the central continent were shocked. Song Tangming had become a legendary figure. How famous was he? Thus, Yang Qingshi's disdain towards Song Tangming immediately brought about ridicule from many people. Their ridicule filled the entire sky, causing Yang Qingshi's face to instantly turn red. Enough! He roared once again, and when everyone was shocked by him, he coldly said, "Do you think I'm joking? Even if Song Tangming is in front of me right now, I can crush him with a single finger. The so-called Nirvana realm killing a saint is simply impossible. Believe me." Yang Qingshi pointed at Yang Lini and said, "The counter-suppressing general is down there. You can ask him if I'm telling the truth." Whoosh! Countless gazes fell on Yang Lini. In an instant, his face turned red. The scene of him being defeated by Chu Yang immediately appeared in his mind, and it was difficult to erase. At the same time, he couldn't wait to go up to the arena and kill Yang Qingshi. However, this was also an opportunity to prove himself and wash away his shame. Therefore, before anyone could ask, he had already said, "When a Nirvana realm cultivator kills a saint, he can only kill a saint from the past. He can't kill a saint from the present. He could kill a saint from the past, but he couldn't kill a saint from the present." What did that mean? Many people couldn't understand. Was there a big difference between a saint from the past and a saint from the present? Chapter 2546. It's impossible for a Nirvana realm cultivator to kill a saint in the future, because it's just a joke. Yang Lini spoke again, and then he continued, "However, it's also a joke for Yang Qingshi to defeat Song Tangming." Yang Lini, are you saying that I'm definitely not a match for Song Tangming? Yang Qingshi immediately retorted, "So, even if you have comprehended and reached the second-order saint realm, you're still not a match for Song Tangming. Is that what you mean?" Yang Lini was furious that Yang Qingshi actually exposed his scars in front of others. His eyes were almost spitting fire. "Yang Qingshi, do you think the state of Confucianism and the state of immortality are bullshit?" As soon as these words came out, Yang Qingshi was speechless. During this process, Chu Yang became more and more confused, but he did not open the mind network to investigate, because he could just ask Yang Qingshi directly after defeating him. What does the former saint and the current saint mean? Who knows, it's so confusing. Saints are saints, why is there a distinction between the former saints and the current saints? There was a lot of discussion among the crowd, and then someone suddenly said loudly, "I understand the former saints are indeed not as good as the current saints." Yes, this is indeed so, and also the truth. Are you saying that the rules of saints have changed again? As Chu Yang listened, he became more and more confused. The level of saints was evaluated according to the Great Tao, and the longer the Great Tao, the stronger the saint's strength. That piece of shit, you look confused. Are you going to show your ignorance, or are you going to look cute? At this time, Yang Qingshi's words pierced Chu Yang's ears. Chu Yang's expression was incomparably playful. It was as if he was a child from the city looking down on a village child who had not seen the world and was a fool. You really want to make me angry? Chu Yang was a little angry, and his expression could not help but turn cold. Angry? Yang Qingshi laughed very happily. You're really from the eastern wilderness, a country bumpkin among country bumpkins, a country bumpkin among country bumpkins, a lowly among lowly. You don't even know this. Damn it. Chu Yang was completely enraged. You bastard, are you bullying me because I'm from a small place? Let me tell you this very responsibly. This marshal is very angry, and the consequences are very serious. You are very angry, and the consequences are very serious. What do you mean by, I told you responsibly? Ha! Yang Qingshi couldn't help but laugh out loud. The angrier Chu Yang was, the happier he was. This time, he was laughing so hard that his stomach hurt. He was laughing like crazy. Is this sentence so funny? Chu Yang narrowed his eyes when he heard this. He restrained his anger and then flipped the hair in front of his forehead. He also laughed and said, Then should this marshal also laugh a few times? Humph! Yang Qingshi's laughter immediately stopped, and then he coldly snorted and said, That piece of shit, you dare to be so arrogant in front of me? You will know how ridiculous you are in a moment. Oh, is that so? Chu Yang smiled and said, I can't wait. Please come and tell me. Waha! The parrot's rampant laughter came from below the field. It said loudly, There is a high-energy warning ahead. Pit Chu is about to go berserk. Please prepare a small bench and watch carefully. Then go home and write a review and hand it in to this divine bird. This divine bird wants to review it. Ha ha! Because of the parrot, the audience roared with laughter again. Everyone was waiting for the arrival of this contest, waiting to see how Chu Yang was going to torment this arrogant Yang Qingshi. Chapter 2547. The crowd roared with laughter, causing Yang Qingshi's expression to turn ugly. Chu Yang, on the other hand, was in a good mood. The feeling of being thought highly of seemed to be very rare and very good. Please, Chu Yang extended his hand and invited Yang Qingshi to do it. Then, he did not forget to praise himself. I'm very polite, right? My words and actions should also be very appropriate. Kneel! Suddenly, an explosive shout was heard. It was mixed with great majesty, the law of a saint's words, and the great suppression of a saint below the saint realm. Yang Qingshi activated all of these. With the pressure of a saint and the law of his words, he suppressed Chu Yang and forced him to kneel. This was only relying on the great path and the power of heaven and earth. On the arena, only visible ripples formed by Yang Qingshi's sound waves could be seen. There was nothing else. Facing this, Chu Yang just looked at him with a calm expression. Chu Yang had encountered this trick before. He never expected Yang Qingshi to use such a method to deal with him. Ha ha, hi, this is really high. This divine bird is laughing to death. The parrot was originally expecting Yang Qingshi to use his ultimate move, but it never expected that it would be this common. It almost laughed to death. Lu Yunping, Xiong Longxiang, and the others also shook their heads. One had to know that when Chu Hang was in the East Continent, it seemed that killing a saint was like killing a chicken. Ha ha! The crowd also burst into laughter. Who is the clown? Is it Chu Hang or Yang Qingshi? I'm dying of laughter. Yang Qingshi actually intends to use the pressure of a saint to suppress Kenshin. What a weirdo! If Kenshin couldn't withstand this, he would have been killed long ago. How could he still be here laughing? Kenshin, someone wants to steal your clown title. You must be careful. Many people even shouted at Chu Yang, who was in the arena. The rest of the people in the arena, such as the 6 great childs of Taijing City, Yang Lini, Wucho, and Rui Zi, just watched all of this coldly. A good competition would probably turn into a farce and make people laugh. Is it funny? Yang Qingshi sneered at the crowd's laughter. It seems like this is really funny, huh? Ha ha! Many people laughed even harder, which made Yang Qingshi even angrier. Let me show you whether this is funny or not. Shua! He suddenly turned around and roared at Chu Yang, "You lowly bastard, kneel down for me!" Buzz buzz buzz. Along with the sound waves, the void started to vibrate. In that instant, Chu Yang suddenly felt an immense might of the heaven and earth pressing down on him. Caught off guard, he bent his knees and almost knelt down in front of Yang Qingshi. Kaka! The sounds of bones cracking could be heard from within his body. At this moment, his entire body couldn't help but tremble violently. All of this had happened abruptly, and it caused the entire surroundings to instantly become deathly silent. The extremely great clamorous noise was completely traceless, and there wasn't the slightest trace of sound. This scene surprised many people. Yang Qingshi had done the same thing, but the result was completely different. Chu Yang naturally felt it the most. Compared to the heaven and earth mighty force before, the heaven and earth mighty force that Yang Qingshi was suppressing on him this time was much stronger. Previously, it was like a baby's little hand grabbing at him, but now it was like a giant sitting on him. Fortunately, he was already a Saint Array Master. That was why he was able to suddenly exert force and hold on when he was caught off guard. Of course, he didn't understand. He really didn't understand. How could there be such a huge change in Yang Qingshi's power of heaven and earth all of a sudden? Bang! Chapter 2548. Waha, Chu Heng didn't expect to be caught off guard by Yang Qingshi. This time, he's really going to go crazy. In the silence, the parrot's rampant laughter suddenly burst out. This time, there's really a good show to watch. This divine bird is looking forward to it. This damn bird wasn't worried about Chu Yang at all. It was worried that Yang Qingshi was too weak and the matter wasn't big enough. Because of this, the audience was in an uproar again. The saints of the past and the saints of the present, is this the difference? Chu Yang looked up at the sky and said faintly. He seemed to have caught something vaguely. Yang Qingshi's pupils shrank slightly, and he seemed a little surprised. Then, he said darkly, "You lowly bastard, I really didn't expect this." Chu Yang still looked up at the sky and thought carefully about that strange feeling. He didn't forget to say, "Please continue your performance. Please continue your performance." It was this sentence again. When Yang Qingshi met Chu Yang before, this lowly bastard, he was insulted by this sentence. Moreover, he was insulted to the point that he suffered internal injuries and was even more humiliated. When he heard this sentence again, he almost fumed. "Lowly bastard, you're courting death." In a rage, he attacked. Suddenly, a more than 3,000 feet long great path appeared in the void. The great path was fiery red, flowing straight in the void like a river of magma. A more than 3,000 feet long great path, it's actually such a long great path. Oh my god, Yang Qingshi's great path is amazing. No wonder he's so arrogant. He's just a first-order saint, but he has a great path that's more than 3,000 feet long. He's a top genius. The great path of the heavenly spirit world's saints had gone through 3 stages: 1,000 feet long, 2,000 feet long, and 3,000 feet long. At the 1,000 feet long stage, the great path of the first-order saint was only 10 feet long, the second-order saint was 20 feet long, the third-order saint was 30 feet long, and so on. 1,000 feet was the limit. The 2 stages of 2,000 feet long and 3,000 feet long were roughly the same as the 1,000 feet long great path. The current stage was between the 3rd stage and the 4th stage. Many saints were still evaluated according to the 3rd stage, but the 4th stage had already appeared. However, there was no pattern yet, and it seemed to be completely different from the first 3 stages. Thus, at this stage, Yang Qingshi was only a first-level saint, yet he had a great Tao of over 3,000 feet. This was indeed astonishing. This was because the changes in the Sage Great Path were usually caused by some geniuses breaking through their limit. Therefore, these geniuses were called pioneers. Yang Qingshi's great Tao was more than 1,000 meters long. Clearly, he could be considered a pioneer in this level. Chu Yang only found out about this later. He only knew the evaluation criteria for the 3rd stage. He knew nothing about the 1st, 2nd, and 4th stages. Naturally, all the standards were first formed in the gene capital of the central continent before being spread to the rest of the heavenly spirit world. Amidst the exclamations of the crowd, the magma-like, 300-meter-long great path quickly transformed into a spear. It was a fiery red spear with magma flowing around it. The spear seemed to be no different from an ordinary spear. It didn't give off any terrifying aura, but it was precisely because of this that it appeared strange and terrifying. Turning the great Tao into a weapon to kill the enemy, this was a common method. How could it be ordinary? Whoosh! The fiery red spear shot straight towards Chu Yang. It was like a fiery light that burned through the void. It traveled through the void at an extremely fast speed. Chu Yang's pupils reflected the image of the spear, but he didn't move. He quietly waited for the spear to arrive. Because of this method, it was very easy for him to deal with it. Not to mention other things, just his identity as a Saint Array Master was enough. Pa. Chapter 2549. Buzz. Buzz. The tip of the fiery red spear trembled violently, and the void buzzed because of it. Circle after circle of fiery red ripples surged out. The heaven-burning fire swept out, and endless magma also surged out. However, not a trace of it could cross over and affect Chu Yang's body. In an instant, everything happened. The clamor that filled the sky had already resounded. He blocked it. The God of Pits easily blocked it. The God of Pits is indeed worthy of being called the God of Pits. His strength is definitely not just at the peak of the Nirvana realm. The peak of the Nirvana realm is just a facade, specially used to trick people. People were actually not very surprised. Instead, the pupils of the 6 great young masters of Taijing City, Huang Fuxian, Wang Lingyun, and the others, could not help but shrink at this time. Because this was the first time they saw Chu Yang make a move and saw his strength. From this, they could be sure that if nothing had changed, Chu Yang, a country bumpkin at the Nirvana realm, could kill a saint like killing a chicken without any problem. Wu Chou was not surprised at all. He did not even have the slightest emotional fluctuation. Chu Yang was able to silently appear in front of me and hear the conversation between me and my mother. How can he be simple? Waha! Chu Heng, this divine bird requests a pause to open the parrot lecture. The parrot attacked again, but Yang Qingshi did not pay attention to it at all. His expression once again revealed a surprised expression. He could not help but say, "Bastard, you surprised me again." Then, he sneered and said, "Do you think my great Tao is only 300 and 500 feet long?" Whoosh! The fiery red spear in Chu Yang's hand suddenly disappeared. He could not control it at all and could only let it escape. The great Tao was formless and could disappear at any time. That was why martial artists could use the great Tao as a weapon without any scruples. Chu Yang naturally knew this clearly. Because of this, he could not help but ponder in his heart. How can I grasp the great Tao? In fact, he had another question in his heart. What did Yang Qingshi mean by the saints of the past and the saints of the present? Looks like I have to open up the heart net to understand everything. Chu Yang indeed looked down on Yang Qingshi. He felt that using the heart net was a form of blasphemy. Of course, there was something wrong with his mentality. Because of this, He was no different from Yang Qingshi, whom he hated, and the 6 great young masters of Taijing City. Once the mind net was opened, he quickly understood the 3 stages of the sage's great path. He also knew about the 4th stage. He was very surprised that the great Tao of the saints was still changing. This was something he had never thought of, nor did he know. Shua. While Chu Yang was doing these things, the fiery red spear had already flown back to the top of Yang Qing's stone. It transformed into a great Tao once again and expanded into a great Tao that was 3,500 feet long. Afterwards, the great Tao changed again. It was like a massive, lava-colored ribbon that unfurled in midair. In an instant, it went from 350 zhang long to 500 zhang long. The 500 zhang long great Tao seemed to have paved a huge path in the void. It was as if it was specially paved for a deity. It was extremely shocking. A 500 zhang long great Tao was really too long. According to Chu Yang's calculation, it was 1,500 meters long. Who could have such a long great Tao? In an instant, Chu Yang's pupils shrank. He carried the great Tao with his physical body and had not condensed his own great Tao. If he had condensed his own great Tao, would it be 500 zhang long? If he used the cultivation of a saint array master and obtained the great Tao of heaven and earth, would the great Tao he condensed be 500 zhang long? He had never tried this before. Chapter 2550. The 500 feet long great path was like a magma dragon that stretched across the air. It was a spectacular sight that made people lose their minds. Then, the great path disappeared. Instead, the huge arena seemed to have turned into a group of volcanoes. Magma pillars shot up into the sky one after another, accompanied by tongues of fire. It seemed to have turned into a world of magma in an instant. This scene caused Chu Yang's eyes to involuntarily narrow, whereas the spectators below the arena were already filled with astonishment. Obviously, the 500 feet long great path also made them incomparably shocked. Chu Yang reacted quickly. Facing the magma pillars that spurted out from below the arena, he immediately dodged. This was the combat examination. He could not leave the arena. Leaving the arena's range was equivalent to admitting defeat. However, the troublesome thing was that the arena had already become Yang Qingshi's. He did not know where the magma pillars would come from, and when they would come out. Everything required Chu Yang to judge for himself. If he did not react quickly enough and was accidentally hit by the magma pillars, then he would probably be in a life and death crisis. He might even be directly obliterated. The arena was like the mouth of a volcano. This was naturally not for no reason. It was the result of Yang Qingshi's great path fusing into one with the arena. Fortunately, Chu Yang's perception was sharp. He could deal with Yang Qingshi's method very easily. This was naturally not Yang Qingshi's trump card. If it was, it would definitely be much more dangerous than this. At this moment, Yang Qingshi was already teasing Chu Yang. He wanted Chu Yang to be in a difficult situation so that he would appear to be in a difficult situation. His anger disappeared as quickly as it had come. "Bastard, you're really nimble." Yang Qingshi was at the other end of the arena. He had his hands behind his back and looked at Chu Yang with interest. Chu Yang did not speak. The reason why he had not made a move yet was because he was not completely confident. A 500 feet long great path was really too shocking. At this moment, he also did not have the chance to confirm whether the strongest great path condensed by his array formation cultivation could be 500 feet long. The reason why he did not know this was because he never knew that a great path could be so long. At the same time, he did not want to reveal his identity as a saint-grade array master. It was not difficult for him to use his cultivation as a saint-grade array master. His skin, flesh, tendons, bones, and internal organs were the formation seals while his body was the formation. Only the Tao of heaven and earth was the seal. He had to be careful to avoid being discovered. Yang Qingshi's disdain for him and his teasing had given him a great opportunity and time. Bastard, are you having fun? Can't you be happier? Yang Qingshi realized that the magma pillars couldn't do anything to Chu Yang. So, with a thought, those magma pillars quickly turned into a huge magma palm. This magma palm was 10 times bigger than the entire ring. It blotted out the sky and the sun as it came crashing down. A huge shadow was cast down, and the area where Chu Yang was at was immediately plunged into darkness. The magma hand slammed down, and he had nowhere to run. Boom! As the magma hand slammed down, Chu Yang's figure disappeared. The only thing that could be seen was the magma hand collapsing and turning into magma that flowed violently in the arena. After that, the magma gathered together and transformed into a huge hand once again. When it grabbed at the air above, people suddenly realized that Chu Yang was already in midair without them noticing. At this moment, Chu Yang's eyes were solemn. He could clearly feel that the power of the fire way in the magma hand was extremely terrifying. If he was hit by that level of power, the consequences would be unimaginable. He did not dare to take it head-on. Boom! The magma hand missed its target once again, and immediately scattered into magma, covering the sky and covering the earth as it poured down. In an instant it transformed into a huge screen of magma fire. Chapter 25:51. Below the arena, people looked at the amazing magma waterfall in midair, and the corners of their mouths could not help but twitch slightly. Such an attack was really terrifying. Rumble. The endless magma waterfall poured down like a heavenly river. Chu Yang was on it, and his tiny figure was almost like an ant. He frowned even deeper. It was not a good idea to keep dodging, and if he was not careful, he might be seriously injured. It seems that I can't keep dodging like this. I have to try anyway. Otherwise, I'll really be looked down upon by that thing. He pursed his lips slightly, and a trace of sarcasm flashed across his handsome face. Immediately, his whole body shone like a divine sun, and he flew toward the magma waterfall. Below the arena, countless eyes clearly captured such a scene, and suddenly there was an outburst of exclamations all over the sky. This move seemed to be no different from suicide. After all, the magma waterfall was transformed by a great path that was 500 feet long. Yang Qingshi could not help but squint his eyes. Chu Yang's move was once again beyond his expectations. Chu Yang's figure was very fast. In an instant, he was submerged by the magma waterfall and disappeared. The next moment, Chu Yang silently rushed out of the magma waterfall, and all eyes immediately fell on him. Safe and sound. Yang Qingshi's eyes suddenly became cold and fierce. King Shen is safe and sound. A great path that is 500 feet long can't do anything to him. King Shen is obviously deliberately creating a tense atmosphere so that he can surprise us later. In the words of a broken bird, King Shen's conscience has been greatly damaged in order to show off. Soon there was a great commotion, and many people could not help but laugh. It seemed that as long as Chu Yang was there, it was difficult not to laugh. It seems that I'm not bad either. After successfully passing through the magma waterfall, Chu Yang knew in his heart that there should be no problem for him to use the formation to condense a great path that was 500 feet long. As he spoke, he waved his hand, and there was immediately a great surge of power in the void, which turned into a giant cyan dragon, and rushed into the magma waterfall with a long roar. At the same time, he created 3 copies of himself. One of them threw out a punch, which turned into a giant golden fist and smashed onto the top of the waterfall. The other held a knife in his hand. He slowly pulled out the knife to cut the water, but the water flowed even faster. He raised a cup to drown his sorrows. He wanted to cut the waterfall in half with his knife. The other person wielded his sword and suddenly moved. A clear sword hum resounded, and rays of sword light were released. They tore through the sky and whistled towards the waterfall of fire. It was as if the waterfall of fire was a piece of cloth that he wanted to cut into strips. Chu Yang finally retaliated. He treated Yang Qingshi's great Tao as a formation, and wanted to dismember it like a formation and completely destroy Yang Qingshi's great Tao. Once he succeeded, Yang Qingshi's great Tao would be dismembered, and he would definitely lose. How could Pit Deity give him the time to reform his great Tao? Bastard, are you daydreaming? Yang Qingshi's cold voice rang out under the gazes of countless people. Soon after, a gigantic magma fist rushed out from the waterfall of fire. A blade and several sword lights also burst forth. Dong! The two gigantic fists met, and a loud sound erupted, like the sound of a heavenly drum being beaten, shaking heaven and earth. Clang! 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 Saber and saber collided. Countless sword rays were like two armies fighting. Thousands of soldiers and horses were hacking at each other. The sound of saber and sword was as dense as the sound of rain, resounding between heaven and earth. Saber lights and sword shadows were crisscrossing in all directions. What an amazing battle! If an ordinary saint were to face such a collision, he would die immediately. I'm afraid that even a 9th stage saint would be useless. The most amazing thing is that Yang Qingshi is only a 1st stage saint. Pit Deity is even more ridiculous. No matter how I look at it, he is only at the peak of the Nirvana realm. Chapter 25:52. Bang bang bang. Clang clang clang. As the two huge fists collided, the two fists finally broke apart. On the other side, the result of the collision of the sword and saber was also out. They were equally matched. The confrontation stopped for a while, and the light that burst out from the collision made the void beautiful, like the morning glow on the horizon. In addition, the wind was howling, and the energy in the sky was sweeping. Everyone's eyes were fixed on the two figures in the air. The first battle of the top 50 was already so intense. Then what about the next battle? What kind of shocking battle would it be? The 6 young masters of Taijing City had not even fought yet. If they fought, it would be terrible. Yang Qingshi changed people's view of him imperceptibly, and they even developed a great respect for him. Not to mention other things, he forced King Shen into a disadvantageous position, which was very shocking. Of course, this did not exclude the possibility that King Shen was deliberately creating a tense atmosphere, or creating suspense. Anyway, according to the law of broken birds, King Shen was usually very relaxed. Naturally, people also knew that the battle between King Shen and Yang Qingshi had just begun. It was a battle between the top candidates of this year. Despicable, can I ask you a question? Chu Yang blocked Yang Qingshi's attack, but Yang Qingshi was not angry at all. He was not in a hurry to attack, and he actually asked with interest and sneered, "Can you answer me? Are you trying to show that you have more leisure time than I do?" Chu Yang looked at Yang Qingshi opposite him. To be honest, he was a little surprised. Why was this guy not angry and became like this? Leisurely and carefree? Yang Qingshi's tone suddenly turned cold. Do you have the qualifications to be leisurely and carefree? You think I am not qualified? This is more interesting, and it can also show my awesomeness. Chu Yang tried to completely infuriate Yang Qingshi. He pretended to ponder over the words he should use. He said, "Yes, it should be awesome. Although it's a bit vulgar, it's direct, relieving, and has great spirit and boldness." Despicable, I wanted to play cat and mouse, but you don't seem to agree. What should I do? Yang Qingshi's voice turned even colder, and he directly provoked, "Lowlife, do you dare to accept a death match? I'm sorry, but you haven't reached that level yet." Chu Yang blew the hair on his forehead and said with a smile, "So, I refuse. The reason is very sufficient. Please accept it." Ha ha! His words made everyone burst out in laughter. Yang Qingshi was furious. These words should have been said by him, but they came out from that lowly mouth. He almost exploded in anger. Faced with the laughter of the entire crowd, he used practical actions as a response. Rumble! People immediately heard a rumbling sound, which seemed to be the sound of a large river surging towards the sea. Immediately after, lava gushed out from the top of Yang Qing's stone like a great river, flowing along the void. In the blink of an eye, the fiery red river appeared in mid-air and was still surging. There was no riverbed in front of them, so they created a riverbed. There was no history in front of them, so they created history. It was as if the long river of history had appeared. Rumble! The surging torrents in the long river suddenly stopped. That fiery red long river extended for 6,000 feet and stopped. A 6,000 feet long great path. Everyone was speechless and dumbfounded. Many people had never seen such a long great path, nor had they ever heard of such a long great path. Lowlife, is that enough? Yang Qingshi saw everyone's reaction, and his anger immediately turned into joy. He smiled happily and said, "If it's not enough, then I'll continue. Do you have any objections?" As soon as he finished speaking, the red long river surged and surged again. In the blink of an eye, it had surged for 1,000 feet. People were even more shocked, and Yang Qingshi was even more proud. "Do you think this is the limit?" As he spoke, the great path that was 7,000 feet long instantly extended for another 1,000 feet. A great path that was 8,000 feet long. This, Chu Yang originally thought that Yang Qingshi had gone mad from anger and had become a pervert. However, the continuous shocking changes caused his pupils to suddenly shrink. He was shocked. His mind was buzzing, and he was extremely shocked. Hee lowlife, why don't you take a guess? Is this the limit? Yang Qingshi's ear-piercing sneer was like a sharp knife stabbing into Chu Yang's heart. Chu Yang felt a sharp pain, but he was even more confused. What's going on? Could it be that Yang Qingshi's great path can extend infinitely? His heart completely sank at this moment. Facing such an opponent, he was afraid that this imperial examination would end here. Chapter 2553. Hee, cheap bastard, why don't you take a guess, is this the limit? Yang Qingshi's words didn't just stun Chu Yang, they also stupefied many people. Many people stared blankly at the 800-meter-long path in the sky. It was a path that looked like a magma river. This was too unbelievable. Someone could actually condense an 800-feet-long Grand Dao. It was unbelievable. Such a Grand Dao was completely beyond people's imagination. Could it be that the fourth stage of the Grand Dao evaluation will have a qualitative change? Could it be that, in the future, 800-feet-long Grand Daos can be seen everywhere? Naturally, some people thought of this, and Chu Yang also thought of this point, but he still didn't know the specifics. No, I have to figure out what is going on first, otherwise I won't have a way to deal with it. Under such an extremely terrible situation, Chu Yang's heart quickly calmed down. This wasn't too dangerous. The situation he encountered in the past was much more dangerous than this. Moreover, it wasn't as if he didn't have a trump card now. Just now, he was just shocked. An 800-feet-long Grand Dao was really too amazing. The next thing was very simple. If he wanted to know the answer, he just needed to find it in Yang Qingshi's mind. Originally, Chu Yang thought that he would need to spend some effort, but at this moment, all the secrets directly emerged in his mind. This country bumpkin must be dumbfounded. It's just an 800-feet-long Grand Dao, and he's already scared out of his wits. He really doesn't know anything. But this is also good. I want to bully this country bumpkin like this. If I do this in the Gene capital, I'm afraid I'll be laughed at. How would I dare to be so presumptuous? This was Yang Qingshi's inner thoughts. He was very proud of himself. So, the contempt and ridicule he felt towards Chu Yang emerged in his heart. And the thoughts in the depths of his heart were completely exposed. So, it was very easy for Chu Yang to catch them. What? The heavenly spirit world is still in the growth stage. How is this possible? That's right, this should be the case. Otherwise, why would the grand Tao of a saint keep changing? And now there are already 3 stages. This was Yang Qingshi's memory. When he first came to the Jin capital, he was shocked to hear that the heavenly spirit world was still in the growth stage, but he soon figured it out. The heavenly spirit world is still growing, and as it grows, the grand Tao will also change. Fortunately, I haven't become a saint, otherwise, if I have condensed a grand Tao, I will be abandoned by the era. The heavenly spirit world is slowly growing, it's getting stronger and stronger. It's already at the stage of a qualitative change. Luckily, I came to Jin City at this time, otherwise I would have missed such a great opportunity. In Jindu, Yang Qingshu began to rejoice after his initial shock. He rejoiced that he had not formed his own great Tao and that he had come to Jindu, the center of the heavenly soul world, the place where the changes were most intense. He had a reason to rejoice. If he had become a saint in advance and condensed his great Tao would only be 3,000 feet long at most. But now, it was different. The grand Tao he could condense was more than 300 feet long. This alone was enough, not to mention there were other things, so how could he not be happy? When Chu Yang learned of this, he was also inexplicably shocked. The heavenly spirit world was still in the growth stage. He also completely understood why Yang Qingshu was so amazing, because he stood at the forefront of the era, as if he had mastered the most advanced technology, turning the impossible into possible naturally. It was incomparably amazing. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.